subscribe. Subscribe to my guy, Uncle D. Tell him Big Bass sent you.
Dennis Spurling. I'm an attorney here in Houston, Texas. An advocate for black men, largely because I am a black man. I'm a black father. I have black sons. Hey, man, I do what I do.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the broadcast. Shout out to everybody in YouTube land. I hope you guys are having a great and wonderful day. My name is Dennis Spurling, and this is the Dennis Spurling podcast. And today we're talking about the Karmelo Anthony trial. And this case is no longer waiting on a jury. Testimony was done yesterday, and the evidence came in, and the closing arguments were over. And today, June 9th, 2026, a Collin County jury found young Karmelo Anthony guilty of murder in the fatal stabbing of Austin Metcalf. Big shout out to my man B Hunter, the spot. Welcome, everybody. You probably are going to learn a lot today, and I hope that my audience, we will be able to learn from this and govern ourselves accordingly moving forward. Conflict happens, but there's a way in which you have to handle yourself in this society. Now, big shout out to Willie D. I spent a lot of time with him today doing the preliminary lead up to this, man. He and I had a great back and forth, two grown men. On many things we agree, but some things we vehemently disagree. But the bottom line is, man, it was a great conversation. Y'all make sure y'all go over there and check out Willie D's channel and my live take on that. It was very passionate. What I try to do oftentimes is just try to give you the cold, hard facts. But sometimes, you know, man, I speak as a father, I speak as an American, and I speak as a man, you know, and all of that, that is not distinguishable. So, but as I always said at this time, man, if you learn something, I should earn something. But let's get back to this work. Somebody type this work in the chat room and make sure if you like this work, you subscribe to the channel, like, share, subscribe. Now, this case involved two 17-year-old boys. Okay, Austin Metcalf is dead. Karmelo Anthony has now been convicted of murder. The stabbing happened on April 2nd, 2025, during a high school track meet in Kirkendall Stadium in Frisco, Texas. And Austin was connected to Memorial High School. Karmelo was connected to Centennial High School, and the basic facts are simple, but the testimony wasn't. It was starting to rain. The track meet was delayed. The kids gathered under a team tent to stay dry. Centennial reportedly didn't have his tent set up yet, so Karmelo was under the Memorial tent. Now, according to the testimony, he was already there before Austin Metcalf and his twin brother Hunter came into the area, and that matters because this wasn't just some random kid walking into another school space looking for trouble. It was raining. The kids were trying to get out of the weather. This boy had a track meet to run in. And Karmelo also knew at least one student under the tent. And the witnesses reportedly saw them greet each other. They dapped each other up. And there's also testimony that Karmelo, you know, he made an off-color joke about Memorial's football team. He said something like, y'all are ass. So, and he was joking with his friend, which lets you know that there was a certain level of comfort that he had. See? And that may have started the tension. I don't know. From there, the stories don't line up perfectly. There was about 9 witnesses. They reportedly gave different accounts about where Austin's twin brother Hunter was, and what Karmelo said, how aggressive the exchange was, how serious the pushes were, or the push was. And some called it a small shove or a nudge, and other witnesses described it as something more like a football style move, you know, in and up, almost like a lineman or a linebacker hitting somebody. And There was also testimony suggesting that the confrontation lasted not a split second, but more like 4 to 6 minutes, which is a lifetime. And that raises some serious questions. Where were the adults? Where were the coaches? Why were kids arguing under a tent for several minutes at a school event with no adults stepping in? And so the physical picture also matters. Karmelo was reportedly sitting on the bleachers. Okay, Austin was standing over him or near him. Some of the witnesses said that Austin, who's a much bigger boy, was standing over him. Some witnesses said Austin leaned in or actually pushed him. And Karmelo allegedly never got out of his seat before the stabbing. The video that they played at the trial didn't clearly capture what was said or exactly what happened under the tent. So the jury had to rely heavily on the witness testimony and the physical evidence and the police statements. After the stabbing, the school resource officer, whose name was Officer Cortez, he responded at about 10:01 a.m. And before being questioned, Karmelo said, "I was protecting myself." Okay, he said this without being prompted, without being questioned by police. He also said he put his hands on me. Later in the patrol car, Karmelo asked whether Austin was going to be okay. But as we know, Austin Metcalf died, and nothing about pointing out inconsistencies changes that fact. We got a boy who's dead, 17-year-old boy, lost his life at a high school track meet. That's a tragedy. But the fact that the ending was tragic doesn't erase the questions about what happened before the stabbing. The jury heard the evidence and found Karmelo guilty of murder. So legally, at least now, or for now, the self-defense argument failed. The jury didn't accept that Karmelo reasonably believed deadly force was immediately necessary. And that's something we need to talk about. Now, as far as this criminal case, the case moves to sentencing, but the bigger question remains. How did a rain delay turn into a murder conviction at a track meet? Why did Karmelo have a knife at school? And how did a teenage ego, a tent dispute, and a few minutes of confrontation turn into one family planning a funeral and another family watching their son face decades in prison? That's what we're talking about today. Somebody type today. Now, let's talk about how the jury got to the murder conviction. Everybody seems to be confused about this other than the prosecutor, the judge, and the defense lawyers. If you don't think they had a pretty good idea what this jury was going to come back with ahead of time, you don't understand the practice of law. Yes, the case had race involved. There was public pressure. And they had emotion all over it. Karmelo Anthony is black. Austin Metcalf is white. The jury had no black jurors. And that matters socially. But legally, the question for the jury was simple. Was this murder, manslaughter, or justified self-defense? The jury came back with murder. So what does that mean? It means the jury believed Karmelo Anthony's use of the knife fit Texas murder law. They didn't believe the self-defense claim justified deadly force. Let's talk about it. Under Texas Penal Code, Section 19.02, murder doesn't only mean a person planned to kill somebody. A person commits murder if he intentionally or knowingly causes another person's death. But a person also commits murder if he intends to cause serious bodily injury and commits an act clearly dangerous to human life that causes death. The second part is important. Listen. The state didn't necessarily have to prove Karmelo woke up that morning planning to kill Austin Metcalf. The state could argue that once Karmelo pulled a knife and used it during a confrontation, he either knowingly caused death or intended to cause serious bodily injury through an act clearly dangerous to human life. A knife to the chest is going to be treated as an act clearly dangerous to human life. And Austin died. And that's how the jury gets murdered. Now, some of you all may not understand murder, capital murder, manslaughter, so we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit. You're going to learn something. Capital murder wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue. Austin was 17. This wasn't a robbery. Karmelo wasn't trying to kidnap him. It wasn't a murder for hire. It wasn't the murdering multiple people. That's not what we're doing. And under the Texas capital murder law, you need one of those aggravating circumstances. So this was never really a capital murder case at all. It was a murder case with manslaughter, and self-defense is the major question. Now, manslaughter. This was a possible lesser option. Now, like most states, Texas has something in its penal code, 19.04. Manslaughter means recklessly causing another person's death. That's where the jury could have said he didn't mean to kill him. He acted recklessly. He pulled a knife in a stupid, emotional, chaotic moment, and the kid died. But the jury didn't do that. They didn't land on manslaughter. They landed on murder. And that tells me the jury believed this wasn't just reckless. The jury believed that the use of the knife crossed the line into intentional or knowing conduct, or at least an intent to cause serious bodily injury through an act clearly dangerous to human life. And I think we all can agree putting a knife in somebody's chest is contemplated to cause serious bodily injury to a human being. Now, I want to dig a little deeper into self-defense, because that's where the case was really fought. Karmelo didn't take the stand. That's the first thing you understand. And to be clear, he didn't have to. A defendant can raise self-defense without testifying. His lawyers could use witness testimony, physical evidence. They could use size difference, the fact that Karmelo was sitting, the fact that Austin was standing. Okay, they're going to look at who touched who first. But they're also going to look at Karmelo's statements after the incident. Shout out to Juan Jeezy. So the defense could point to Karmelo allegedly saying, I was protecting myself. He put his hands on me. They could say Austin was bigger. They could say Austin was standing over him. They could say Karmelo was sitting down the whole time. They could say Austin put hands on him first. They could say Karmelo felt surrounded. But see, the problem is because Karmelo didn't take the stand, he couldn't say that. It might have been enough to raise a self-defense. They can argue it in a closing statement. But raising a self-defense isn't the same as winning a self-defense argument. And that's where the defense failed. Now, we can hindsight this thing because that's, hindsight is 20/20. But I understand why the defense didn't want to put that boy up on the stand. He's 19 years old. He would have cracked under that cross-examination. And that made the jury not like him more than they already didn't like him. Now, I want to explain something very carefully to you. I want y'all to listen to me because there's a lot of ignorance on the internet right now. We're going to talk about ordinary self-defense. Somebody type ordinary in the chat room. Ordinary. Pay attention. The Texas Penal Code, Section 9.31 covers ordinary self-defense. Most of you all who live in the United States, there's only one state that doesn't have ordinary self-defense, but bottom line is, some states, they won't let you defend yourself, but the bottom line is, Texas is one of those places that have something called self-defense, and they refer to as ordinary self-defense in 9.31 in the Texas Penal Code. If Austin pushed Karmelo, grabbed him or tried to move him, Karmelo had the right to use force back. He had the right to defend himself. Nobody's refuting that. I think we all can agree if somebody puts their hands on you, you have a right to defend yourself, correct? Right? If somebody pushed you, grabbed you, okay, you have a right to push them back. Hell, you have a right to swing on them. You have a right to kick them in the shin, kick them in the nuts. You have a right to hit them with an uppercut. You have a right to take your right hand and swing as hard as you can and try to hit them with a haymaker. But see, that's ordinary self-defense. That's not deadly force. You see the difference? See, when we go to the Texas Penal Code, section 9.32, it says deadly force is justified only if the person would already be justified in using force under section 9.31. In other words, you can already use ordinary force, okay? But in addition to that, you have to reasonably believe deadly force is immediately necessary to protect yourself against unlawful deadly force. In other words, they're using deadly force against you. And you can use deadly force to prevent serious crime like murder, aggravated kidnapping, SA, aggravated SA, robbery, or aggravated robbery. See, that's the legal problem. Are y'all listening? Let me run this down to you. The self-defense argument failed because Texas treats regular force and deadly force differently. Where was the deadly force coming from Austin? Where was the deadly force coming from Austin Metcalf? Huh? He pushed him. We can agree, right? He pushed him. But where was the weapon? Where was Austin's knife? Where was Austin's gun? Where was his baseball bat? Where was the evidence that Karmelo was about to get killed or suffer serious bodily injury as he sat there in that stadium in a rainstorm with a whole bunch of other people under the tent? That's what I'm trying to understand. And that's why the jury rejected the self-defense argument, because there was no deadly force. Yeah, somebody put their hands on you. Yeah, I get that. But you can't haul off and bust a cap in them, can you? Because somebody pushed you. You can't stab them because somebody pushed you, can you? Is that what we are? I'm just asking questions. Somebody type just asking questions. Because, see, the question is not whether or not Austin Metcalf was wrong. He was wrong for putting his hands on that other little boy. Keep your hands to yourself. Keep your hands to yourself. I get that. Austin was wrong. He put his hands on Karmelo first. I get that. That's easy. He pushed him. Hell, he tried to jack him up like a football player. I get that. He tried to forcibly remove him out the tent. But see, here's the problem. Under Texas law, that doesn't automatically justify the use of deadly force. You can't stab somebody because they pushed you. This is not somebody getting stomped out by 5 people. Karmelo wasn't on the ground getting stomped out till he was damn near unconscious. This wasn't some grown man attacking a child in an alley in the Bronx at 2 o'clock in the morning. This wasn't South Central LA in the 1990s and somebody surrounding you because you made a wrong turn to the Jordan projects. This is a high school track meet in suburban Frisco, Texas. Wide open, daylight, stadium full of kids and coaches and tents and witnesses and grown-ups. 2 17-year-old kids from different schools. One boy may be a little bit bigger. One was sitting down. One put hands on the other one. But this is a fist fight. Because, see, what the jury had to decide was whether this justified pulling a blade and using deadly force. And they said, no, you don't have to like me. I'm telling you what the jury said. And if you, in the word to the wise to be sufficient, if you find yourself in a situation, where you feel compelled to pull out that iron and let somebody have it, understand that you might end up in the penitentiary. Especially if they've done nothing more than insult you or put their hands on you, something like that. I'm just giving you that word. I'm giving it to you. You don't have to like what I'm saying, but you better talk to your kids. You better talk to your children. You better talk to your man. You better watch it. You better control yourselves. You can't escalate like that. And here's another one. Somebody type, stand your ground. Stand your ground. The no duty to retreat argument, that failed too. Just like many other states down south, Texas law does say that in certain circumstances, a person doesn't have to retreat before using force or deadly force. But no duty to retreat doesn't mean you get a free license to kill somebody. You still have to meet the deadly force standard. You still have to reasonably believe force is immediately necessary. That's why Karmelo's not testifying probably mattered. Think about it. Now, he didn't have to take the stand. I'm gonna say that again, and we're all innocent until proven guilty. I understand why the defense lawyers didn't. I know why criminal defense lawyers don't want to put their clients on the stand in criminal cases, especially murder cases. But without that testimony, without that clear view showing exactly what happened under the tent, the jury never heard from him. They didn't hear him explain. He didn't get a chance to say, this is what I saw, this is what I felt, this is what I believed. I was about to suffer death or some serious bodily injury. He didn't get up there and say, yeah, you know, these dudes surrounding me. I know this boy's got a reputation. They know jujitsu. None of that. Bottom line is, weighing all those factors, I believe I needed to use my knife to protect myself. He didn't say that. Instead, the jury had to piece his fear together from witness testimony and police statements in the scene. And apparently that wasn't enough, was it? I mean, look, this is a schoolyard fight. This is not a deadly force situation. Austin didn't pull a gun. He didn't pull a knife. Karmelo wasn't beaten unconscious. He wasn't broken and bleeding. He wasn't getting packed out. This is a teenage confrontation under a tent at a track meet, man. It was Karmelo that escalated ordinary force to deadly force. That's how the jury got to murder. You don't have to like what I'm saying, but it is what it is. You want to know what happened, or you want me to tell you, you want me to say something to make you feel good? Somebody type feel good in the chat room. Y'all want to feel good, or you want the facts? Shout out to the Reparation Perspective. Shout out to Inspirational Truth. You want to feel good? Everybody want me to make them feel good. If you want me to make you feel good, type feel good in the chat room. I want you to make me feel good. I'm not going to make you feel good over here. That's somebody else's page. It's not what we do here. We tell the truth over here. We're going to be honest over here. Hopefully this will save some of y'all lives. Now, before we proceed any further, I have a few videos. Got a lot of people who are passionate about this subject. I'm going to go ahead and let some of these videos play. You all make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll interview some people, and these are some common questions that a lot of people are posing as a result of this. And I want to go ahead and get them on in there. All right, boom.
We know that right around closing arguments, a judge did throw in the fact that they can consider manslaughter. They deliberated in just under 3 hours, and they did come back with a guilty verdict for murder. So Karmelo faces anywhere between 5 to 99 years in prison. But we know the death penalty was not on the table because he was 17 years old at the time of this whole situation. So we know that Karmelo's lawyer argued that this was a self-defense.
Now, the death penalty is not on the table because it wasn't a capital murder case, but we'll let the little lady finish speaking. And on top of that, remember, manslaughter is called a lesser included charge. You got murder, manslaughter, etc. Okay, these are lesser included charges. So when she says the judge mentioned manslaughter, what she's referring to is the fact that at the time the defense rested their case in chief, the prosecutors rested their case in chief, the judge had something called the jury charges, which is basically typically 20, 30 pages. And the judge literally reads all the jury charges to the jury. And that's the law. At the beginning of each voir dire, at the beginning of each case, one of the questions that they ask the jurors is whether or not you can tell the truth. Matter of fact, voir dire, which I believe is the Latin word, it stands for speak the truth. And so, you know, you're supposed, and this is when the jury is selected, you're supposed to speak the truth. And one of the questions they ask you is, can you follow the law? And so one of those things is, hey, if you find this person not guilty of this, you have to consider manslaughter. So that's what she means. But let's continue listening.
This case, and Karmelo feared for his life after a confrontation between him and Austin Metcalf. The prosecutors argued that they did not believe that Karmelo actually feared for his life. Now, there are crowds gathered outside of this courthouse, and tensions are expected to rise. Now, also, from what I'm gathering, sentencing will also occur today. Now, you guys, I know there's been a lot of back and forth when it comes to this case, but I'm very curious, what are your thoughts? Do you believe this was a self-defense case, or do you believe the jury got it right? Comment down below.
No, the jury believed that his actions were intentional. They don't believe that they were reckless. That could have a lot to do with the fact that where he was struck, boy was struck in the chest and bled out. That could be due to the fact that, you know, some of the things were said ahead of time. But that's not what the jury believed. Let's keep listening.
Guilty of first-degree murder. A lot of people were mad.
No. Again, in Texas, a lot of people are confusing some things. It's just murder, not first degree. It's just murder, capital murder, manslaughter. Okay, let's keep listening.
Well, it's official. Karmelo Anthony was just found guilty of first-degree murder. A lot of people were mad at me for saying that he was going to probably be found guilty, and all I did was go on CBS.com and read all of the court updates. But I didn't even need to do that to understand that he was guilty in this scenario. It's almost like I understand that you can't bring a knife to a school sporting event and then use that knife to kill someone else.
Yeah, that's another thing. The defense, and because the young man didn't take the stance, somebody typed the knife. Have you the knife? How do you, if you're sitting on the jury, one of the questions is, well, why did he have a knife? Why did he have a knife in the first place? That seems like one of the most obvious questions. Shout out to J Day. Why did he have the knife? Now, when you review the Frisco school district policy, they specifically say you're banned from having a knife on campus. And because Cockendall Stadium is part of that school district property, he wasn't supposed to have the knife. Now, there was an expert that testified on behalf of the defendants who came in and said the knife was legal, i.e. possessing the knife, which was somewhere between 2 and 3.5 inches long. It was a legal blade. It's not like it was a 5-10 inch blade. It was a legal blade, but having that knife on campus, one of the students having that knife on campus in itself was a violation. So he shouldn't have had it in the first place. Okay, you shouldn't be bringing weapons to school in the first place. Can the grown-ups agree with that? I know it's a lot of emotional people here that are angry because, you know, you see this as black and white, and clearly it's black and white. It's a race issue involved, but at the end of the day, can we agree that he shouldn't have had a knife on campus? Can we agree to that? Can we agree that we don't want our children bringing weapons? We don't want our children or anybody else's children bringing knives and guns and dangerous weapons to the schoolyard? Can we agree with that? Here's another one. Can we agree as a parent? I'm a parent. My kids attended Texas schools. When I send my son to a track meet on a Saturday morning, I don't expect him to come back to me in a body bag. Is that a reasonable expectation? Let me give you something else. If I send my son to a track meet on a Saturday with the rest of the good kids, I don't expect to get a phone call from the jailhouse 2 hours later saying he caught a murder charge. Can we agree that that's extreme? So if we can agree that both of those things are extreme, then we have to ask ourselves as society, what went wrong? We have to ask ourselves that question, okay? So I'm gonna leave it at that. Let this gentleman get back to speaking.
It was really super simple to understand from day one.
Super simple. All right, let's move on to the next. This gentleman's an attorney, apparently. Let's see what he
This
has to
young
say.
man right here has been convicted by a jury by way of a verdict of red rum. This case draws a lot of parallels with another case that is trending in social media, Chud the Builder. Depending on which perspective you have.
Now, all the people who are angry that the self-defense didn't work for Karmelo Anthony, all the people who are angry and you think it's unfair that the self-defense didn't work for Anthony, Karmelo Anthony, it's probably not going to work for Chud the Builder either. It's an imperfect defense. It's an imperfect defense. Okay? Let's keep listening to what this gentleman has to say, because he draws some very interesting correlations between the two cases. Even though one is in Tennessee, the other one is in Texas, the law is generally similar, but it's not the same. Different juries, different jury pools, different judges, etc. But we'll keep listening.
You have or which bias you have, you'll see it totally differently. But it's basically the same thing, an imperfect self-defense. You can defend yourself with proportional force. So if somebody is using non-deadly force on you, you can punch them, you can hit them, but you can't use deadly force like a knife or a gun. Chud, he's going to have the same problem.
Yeah. Now, did you all hear what he said? Because I know y'all don't believe anything I say because I'm black. The minute I said, oh, he sold out. But the white man just told you the same thing I told you. Isn't that something? You have to use proportional force. There's a difference between ordinary force and extraordinary force or deadly force. You can't do that. You can't bring a knife to a fist fight and then say self-defense. Now, there might be some scenarios where if you're a 110-pound female, 5'1", and some 6'1", 210-pound dude is running up on you, and you pull out a pistol and you put 5 in them, that might be acceptable. But this is not the case that we have here, is it? It's not the case, is it? Right now, we got about 150, 170-pound 17-year-old versus another 17-year-old who's 6'1", 210. That sounds like a pretty good damn fight to me. I done seen a bunch of 170-year-olds take dudes much bigger than that down if they're good with their hands. They don't pull out a knife and stab somebody. You put them things up. You understand? I'm just saying. Maybe I'm old school at this point. You understand? Maybe I'm old school. Maybe I'm too old to understand, the reality that you all are dealing with, you young people out there. Maybe that's it. But what I do understand is that sometimes being a man is fighting somebody or fighting something that's bigger than you and stronger than you, at least outwardly speaking. But what's the, I mean, you only gonna fight people smaller than you? You gonna pull out every time somebody's bigger than you, gonna pull out a knife and stab them? How long is that gonna last? Huh? I'm just saying. Again, family, I know it hurts your heart. I get what we're saying, but you cannot pull a knife out because somebody made you scared, because somebody pushed. You can't do that in this society. And if you do that, you probably gonna end up in prison because your self-defense is gonna fail. Now, again, there are exceptions. If you got a 70-year-old, 80-year-old man or woman, and some young Thundercats run up on them and push them down, or push them and they pull out that thing and that pew and put some hot ones in them, you know what? If I'm sitting on the jury, I'm be like, not guilty, self-defense. You shouldn't have been messing with that old man. You should have left him alone. Matter of fact, if you don't make it, we're going to put you in jail for picking on them old people. That's elder abuse. But that's not the situation here. That's not what happened in this situation. This situation is different. So we're going to take it as it is. Let's keep listening to what the people have to say.
Found guilty of murder. I don't think that boy received a fair trial. In my opinion, that case should not have been tried in Collin County, Texas, right? The defense should have been granted the motion to change venue, right? There was no black jurors. Obviously, all of the witnesses were biased and probably heavily influenced by the kind of sentiment that pervaded that community.
Bro, it ain't just that community. You think, I mean, first of all, you're not entitled. Well, let me say it like this. You're entitled to a trial by jury, a jury of your peers. You're not entitled to a trial of people who are of your own race. That's not how it works. The jury is selected typically from people who registered to vote, people who have driver's licenses, people who pay taxes or some variation of state, local taxes, property taxes in that area. That's generally how it works. That's what you get. And my understanding is that this Collin County is 50% white, 20-some% Asian, which includes East Asian and Central Asian. You got about 14% Hispanic, and the rest is black. That's pretty much, they chose to live out there. That's where they chose to live out and go to school. That's their peer. That's where they chose to live, right? Right? It's not, I mean, you know, I guess we could argue he was just passing through, but he wasn't. And what I'm trying to point out to you is this is the judicial system. Where would you want to send them to South Dallas? Because here's the problem. That jury in South Carolina with that Rick Child case, what did that jury look like? Was that jury all white? Was that jury all Asian? Rick Child's an Asian man arrested and held in jail, who at that time was allegedly had shot a black boy in the back 130 yards away after chasing him. Those clearly weren't his peers, were they? But they found him not guilty. You see what I'm saying? And somebody saying, yeah, he needed Rick Child's lawyer. Yeah, you know that same black lawyer? Yeah. Karmelo Anthony needed Rick Child's lawyer. That's who he needed. You know, the same one y'all said sold out, that's who he needed. You needed some lawyers like that. But anyway, yeah, let's keep listening to the brother.
This was a racially charged case, obviously. And in my opinion, this is just terrible news. But even if the verdict would have went the other way, people on the extreme right, especially on the extreme right, was ready to make Metcalf a martyr, right? Because they are hell-bent on starting some kind of race war, some weird shit like that, man. But once again, just within a matter of...
He already a martyr. Just because the dude went to jail don't mean he's not already a martyr. He's not, he's already a martyr. You see what I mean? Basically, they saying, see, there they go again. What do they say? What did Chud the Builder say? There they go again. Chimping out. Isn't that what they say? Here we have one who, this guy didn't even have a criminal record. He was a track student, good student. He still imped out himself. You see, this is what I'm saying. It's always going to be race involved. The great Johnny Cochran, in one of his books, man, he said that race is always an issue. It is. It's something you have to deal with. It's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. All of you all who are looking for a post-racial society, it's not going anywhere. These are the facts on. These are the facts on the ground. You living in a fantasy world if you ever think the United States of America is going to somehow separate itself from racism. Racism is the national pastime. It's not baseball. It's not apple pie. This is what we do here in the USA. This is what you do in a multicultural society with multi-ethnic groups. Racism is part of the national ethos. It was here from the onset. It's not going anywhere. Deal with it. Somebody type deal with it in the chat room. Period. But anyway, let's keep it moving. Let's look at the next video. All right.
I mean, I'm not saying that I'm surprised about anything. Like I said, I just made a post about this earlier. I didn't have much faith in my heart for this young man's case, you know. But at no point in time should everyone ignore what's happening right now in the system. At no point in time should anyone ignore this case. These are high schools we're talking about, little kids, young teenagers who honestly, one lost their life and one is losing their freedom as we speak. Just graduated from out of high school. Beautiful, bright future ahead of him, and now he's going to prison. You get what I'm saying? This is some really fucked up shit for a young man who has no history of even being a harmful young man to anyone.
Fair use.
Everyone grew up in a beautiful family and things like that, man. And just who can tell you where the fuck to move to? At some point, everyone's gonna have to recognize the system and the way that they do shit and how much they keep on getting off with the same shit, and go from there with this shit for real.
Yeah, there's no geographical solution for an emotional problem. You got to control yourself. Let me explain something to y'all, man. Let me get in here real tight. I got 3 sons. I got an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 10-year-old. The conversation that I would, if that was my son and he was in some stuff like that, the conversation I had with my sons behind closed doors and in public would be 2 different things, very distinct. And I want you to hear me because I'm going to tell y'all, I'm going to speak to you like a real daddy. And I love my children with all my heart. It's nothing I won't do for them. And in public, I'm going to be a dedicated father. My son is innocent until proven guilty. I'm going to spend the money that I need to spend to help him put up a proper defense. I'm going to support him in public. I'm going to say he was sitting there minding his business. The other kid that kept his hands off of him, it wouldn't have happened. However, behind closed doors, I'm going to have a whole different kind of conversation with him. I'm going to say, what the hell were you thinking? I'm going to say something like, you killed somebody because they pushed your ass. That's what we doing? Somebody pushed your ass. You ain't been pushed before. Your big dumb ass has killed somebody. Now you looking at basically you going to jail. You cost somebody a life. You done destroyed somebody else's family. That other little boy that you killed, he'll never have a wife. He'll never have children. He'll never be a grandfather. He'll never graduate from high school, college. He won't be able to go to the prom because your ass didn't want to get your goofy ass up and leave. Okay, if you didn't want to leave, your scary ass didn't want to, you that goddamn scared, you got to pull a knife out. You big and bad enough to pull a knife out and stab somebody, but it's that much harder just to steal off on them. Have you lost your mind? And I would say to each and every one of my other guys, are you crazy? And this is what you're doing? You kill somebody because they pushed you? Where they do that at? You don't kill somebody because they push you. If you got a problem with it, you address it. Keep your hands off me. Back up off me. And if you don't like it, you hit their ass in the jaw so they learn their lesson. And some of y'all keep dwelling on the fact, oh, he was 200 pounds. What the hell does that mean? In the world of men, 200 pounds is not very big at all. 6'1", 200 pounds is not something I would even consider tall. That's pretty extra regular to me. You got 2 17-year-old men, both of them played football. You telling me that Karmelo Anthony was never pushed before on the football field by a linebacker or a lineman? I'm just saying. Or was it something else? Or were we ego tripping out here? Like a lot of us do. We get to ego tripping because we don't want to get punked in front of all these other people, our friends, people that don't give a damn about you now. You see all of them came to court and testified against his ass. These are the people you trying to impress. I'm just saying, these are the people you trying to impress. Some little hot tail girl that's looking at you and you want to look at a man, you're going to be getting looked at in prison for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Y'all better think about it. You better talk to your children. That's what you better do. You better teach your children to control themselves because, see, this ain't just the only reason we even talking about this problem is because a white boy got killed. Had Karmelo Anthony, instead of killing Austin Metcalf, had he killed Jamal Jenkins, this wouldn't even make the evening news, would it? Tell the truth. Don't lie to me. Don't lie to me. Tell the truth. The only reason we talking about this problem because this boy jumped up and stabbed that white boy in the chest. That's why. Control yourselves. It's not that serious. How about that? How about we say that? How about instead of telling your children if somebody hits you, you hit them back harder? How about you say, why don't you try to avoid this conflict? Because you don't know where this is going to go. How about that? How about you don't want to throw your life away because somebody pushed you? How about you have more to live for than this little ego tripping that you're doing right now? You crash out. You throw your life away protecting a stadium seat. Not even a seat, a space on a bench. This is what you ready to crash out over that? I'm just saying, family. Y'all don't have to listen to me. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to nothing I say. You go ahead and teach your children exactly what you want to. And let's see how far that gets you. Not very far in this society. But let's go ahead and keep listening. Let's keep on listening, see what else they have to say.
Came to a close and the verdict is guilty. Karmelo Anthony now faces anywhere between 5 to 99 years in prison for this. There is a crowd of people outside of the courtroom and the family is absolutely furious. There's word coming out from the courtroom that Karmelo visibly broke down and the family stormed out of the courtroom, and you can hear the screams and the crying, and it's just so fucking sad. My prayers are going out to this family, and my prayers go out to the Black community as a whole. Please, please, do not let these people invoke you, because we all know very well that's what they want. They want us upset, they want us angry, and they want us in the streets.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I agree with that, but and I know we're wrestling, but you still have a right to voice your opinion, you know. And my thing is, at this point, I'm concerned about other young people. Because clearly, you know, you can't escalate like that, man. Somebody punches you, you can't pull out a pistol and shoot them. This is a conversation we've been having in the Black community for decades amongst men. A lot of these youngsters, they don't fight no more. They don't want to sit up there as a man and fight. You can fight with somebody, man, and get your respect, and y'all might end up being friends. It's not always deadly beef. I don't understand that. I don't understand why every altercation has to get so serious. I don't understand that. You know, it's always got to be bigger than what it is. It's a schoolyard fight. It happens 100 times a day in every city in America. Some kid pushes another kid. Is this where we are now? We just gonna escalate the violence? Huh? If not a knife, then what? A pencil? A pen? Huh? Is this what kids just gonna come up stab? Because we don't know how to de-escalate or deal with conflict? In a school, these are the good kids. I'm not talking about something happened in the ghetto somewhere. These are the good kids at a track meet at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday in the suburbs. Let's listen to this last video, man.
On the case at all, but guilty is crazy. when the judge is cool with the daddy and the daddy is cool with everybody that's on stand, like that's a lose-lose situation.
Shout out to Myron Magnin. Bro, it's a small town. Everybody cool with everybody in a small town. They all know each other. You're not going to get around that. It's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. Most of the reason that these people get elected to these offices is because the people that they know vote for them. And that's normally the people in the town. Normally, you only have 2 people you can choose from. Of course, they know each other. But that still doesn't negate the fact that there's a dead body that needs to be accounted for. I want y'all to let's not lose sight of the fact that somebody died. We're not talking about a theft of a car or somebody stole somebody's lawnmower or some kind of minor crime. We're talking about a murder case. It doesn't matter if that's not the type of conflict that's going to make that dead body erase. And folks just need to understand that. You can make all the excuses you want to, but Karmelo Anthony killed Austin Metcalf over a push. You can say whatever you want to, man. But it is what it is. Let's keep listening.
Regardless, y'all could have told him that he was guilty last year. It's obvious that y'all were gonna say that he was guilty regardless, even if all the evidence shows that he was defending himself. They came up to him messing with him. You know what I'm saying?
Man, look, shout out to Myron Mack. Nobody says that Karmelo Anthony didn't have a right to defend himself. Is that clear to you all? I want to make sure that's clear. Karmelo Anthony didn't pick the fight. Karmelo Anthony had a right to defend himself. Is that clear? We understand that, right? That's clear. Let's not be obtuse. He had a right to defend himself. Is that clear? Did I make that clear? The question is not whether or not he had a right to defend himself. The question is whether or not he had a right to utilize regular force or deadly force. And when I say regular force, I mean if somebody is punching you, then you have the right to use the type of force in response that matches that. You have a right to punch them back. If somebody's pushing, you have a right to push them back, and you don't have to retreat. You don't have to run away. What you don't have a right to do is to pull out a deadly weapon and use that weapon to cause serious or attempt to cause serious bodily harm or death to another person. Is that clear? Are we clear on that? Is that a difficult concept for anybody to understand? I get it. He didn't pick the fight. He was sitting there minding his business. The other little boy came and pushed him. Okay? There was some back and forth between the two. But you still don't have a right to use deadly force to kill somebody. Is that clear? Because, see, that's something that all you folk need to understand. This goes for adults, too. You down at the Piggly Wiggly. You down at the Piggly Wiggly somewhere, getting neck bones and collard greens for Sunday dinner, and you got your hands on the basket, and somebody comes in and tries to take your basket away from you and push you aside. Did they give you a right to pull out that 380 and pop them in their cranium? Absolutely not. And no, you're doing too much. You're doing too much. You can't match regular force with deadly force. I don't know how simple. That's something your grandma should have taught you. That's something your daddies and mamas and family should have. You can't do that to people. Here's another one for you all. Fellas, you walking down the street and some woman comes up and hauls off and hits you clean in your mouth. She 120 pounds. Now, it didn't hurt, did it? It didn't hurt. I mean, you might have been offended. Does that give you a right to just go ahead and hit her with that right hook, uppercut, jab, elbow to the chin? No. That's an excessive use of force, even though it's considered she put her hands on you. You can't do that to a 110-pound woman. You understand that? Does that make sense? That's why you go to jail. That's why you go to prison when you fighting your girlfriend. Because the judge is going to say, your big ass shouldn't have been hitting that girl in the first place. You too big. The force that you use as a man, you too big. You need to walk away. That's what I'm trying to explain to y'all. In this particular situation, yes, two 17-year-old boys got into some sort of physical altercation, leading to a push or a linebacker push, and the other boy decided to jump up and stab him in the chest. Doesn't that seem wrong to you all? And I'm just saying, does it seem a bit excessive? Does it? Because to me, it does. I don't like this case. The reason I haven't spoke about this in a year and a half, I don't have any posts, look through my social media. I don't like this case. Don't like it at all. It's distasteful because two kids are involved. One of them died and one of them going to the penitentiary for about 10, 20 years. I don't like it. But I'm dealing with it because you all need to understand. You just because somebody puts their hands on you does not give you the right to take their life. I get it. Unless we talking about SA, unless we talk about multiple people hitting you, unless you're an old person and they're a very young person, you can't do it. You just can't do it in this society. I know you don't like it. I know y'all don't like to be told what you can't do. I get that, but you can. And if you do, you're going to go to the penitentiary for a long time. And you can take that as good advice or not. You can say whatever you want to say. I don't care. Somebody's going to put you in the penitentiary and you're going to be there forever. Now let's keep listening to this brother.
Yeah, but long story short, bro, listen, when it comes to a situation like this, I'm biased. I like every race. You know what I'm saying? I like whoever like me. I don't pick and choose sides, but this shit right here wasn't right. And us being grown people, we know that shit wasn't right. I'm all about accountability. At the end of the day, it just shows you that you can be a young black man that mind your business and living correctly, parents doing good in life, minding your ain't no trouble child, going to school, not a thug, not a gangster, not even a bad child. You just guilty just by your skin color. Now,
He's right. Carmelo, for all intents and purposes, Karmelo Anthony is a good kid, no criminal record, good grades, college bound. We get that. We understand that. And that's what makes this even more tragic. This is not one of these YNs out here flocking and gangbanging and drug dealing and stealing and killing. This is not what we talk about. And that's what makes this more of a tragedy. But you know what? When they see Karmelo Anthony, they don't see that. What they see is one of these YNs, because they see the YN and they see Karmelo Anthony and they see the skin color, they see the age. And this is the issues that we have as black people. Unfortunately, as black people, they put us all in the same category. They see a young black man, they don't see him college bound. They don't see a young professional. They see a thug. Now, whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? I know, the media, right? It's the media's fault. I get it. It's the media's fault. Do we play any part in that at all? Do we propagate those negative stereotypes in the black community? Huh? What music do we listen to? Huh? What styles do we promote? I'm just saying. I mean, you know, are we propping up the engineers and the mathematicians in the black community? Is that what we propping up? Shout out to Myra May. Are we? Are we popping up the YNs and the thugs? We need to ask ourselves like that. Who speaks for us? Who's out there with the microphone speaking on behalf of black people? Somebody type baddies in the chat room. Somebody type baddies in the chat room. I'm just saying. Somebody type YNs in the chat room because they seem to be the most vocal. When people think of black culture, it is synonymous with ghetto behavior, isn't it? So when you have a good kid who unfortunately was involved in a horrible incident like Karmelo Anthony, and when I say good kid, I'm talking about before this conviction, this boy's record was spotless. He get lumped in with the thugs. So when the jury see him, guess what they see? They see a YN. They don't see Karmelo Anthony, the scholar, the football player. They see a YN. And it's the same thing for me. And if you got a black child, it's the same thing for your black child too. And it goes same for the women. It's the truth. I don't care if you all don't like what I have to say. You're going to hear it. Don't come over here if you don't like to hear the truth. We're going to speak the truth over here. If you want somebody to say, oh, man, I'm not that guy. I don't care enough about your feelings to try to make you feel good. I don't. You're going to get this work. Somebody type that work in the chat room. You're listening, aren't you? Are you listening? You're finally listening to Uncle D. Because see, about 5 or 6 years ago, I said, hey, we have a degenerate culture, and it's going to start affecting all of our reputations. Remember I said that? Remember I used to talk about that? Remember I used to say, ladies, you probably need to, talk to your children since you all are the mothers and, y'all mostly raise the children. We got to chill out on this degenerate behavior. Y'all told me a lot of stuff. Y'all told me I was anti-black woman and everything. That's what y'all told me. I said, well, let me just be an advocate for black men. Remember I said that? Y'all say I was anti-black. Remember y'all reported me to the FBI? And then I threatened to sue the FBI and made the FBI back down. Y'all remember that? Huh? Y'all remember that lady said that crazy stuff about me on that website, and then I had her website taken down. Y'all remember how many people I sued messing with me, got their channels dismissed, called their probation officers? Yes, see, I fight back. Uncle D fight dirty. Somebody type fight dirty in the chat room. Yeah, this is what I've had to go through trying to explain to y'all that this is the eventual outcome if we don't get hold of our reputation. Little black boys are going to get shot in the back, running away from a situation that they ain't do nothing wrong. Little black boys are going to get put in jail even if they defending themselves. This is what's going to happen. This is what I told y'all. Y'all didn't like that. And so now, my question, are you ready to live? Because you can't run from it. It's still here. I'm still here. Okay? Are y'all ready to listen? Let's listen. Somebody type listening. Let's listen. Y'all ready to listen to old Uncle D while I'm still willing to talk to y'all? I could be in my backyard enjoying my garden, but I'm not. Now, with all that said, we started off, Karmelo Anthony's been found guilty. And we talked about why the jury rejected the self-defense. And we talked about the legal stuff. But now we got to talk about the historical stuff. Are y'all ready to learn something? Huh? Because see, let me say this. Okay, let's be honest, right? Let's be honest. All right. I know because y'all like, Uncle D, you sold out. You saw, I know. I get it. You not defending, I'm not pro-black. Uncle D is not pro-black. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not going to make you feel good. I'm never going to make you feel good. But I'm going to tell the truth. And to all you right-leaning black people, I'm not with you either. Okay? I'm not one of those racism doesn't exist people. I'm not that guy. Not at all. Okay? Because see, I know this. If the roles were reversed and you had a 6'1", 210 black man who tried to jack up a little small white boy sitting on a bench in a rainstorm under a little tent, right? And the white kid jumped up and stabbed him in the chest. Okay, right? After the black kid pushed him like a linebacker, guess what? Society would have seen that as justified. Yes, it would. They would have said, well, where was he supposed to go? He was just sitting there minding his business, and the big black kid came over and put hands on him. He was defending himself against some bigger, big black person. That would have been, and the underlying sentiment would have been, you know how those people are. They would have said the black kid was what? Chimping out, being aggressive, acting like a threat. Then they would have said, usual suspects. The little white boy would have had if Karmelo Anthony's real name was Carl Smith, he have $1 million GoFundMe right now for his defense. He wouldn't even went to jail. He'd have enough money to get a damn master's degree at Harvard by now and invest in ChatGPT, which is about to go public. See, what I'm saying is, either way, the court of public opinion would have justified this little white boy stabbing a 210-pound black kid for picking on him. That's true. I'm telling the truth. And that's where the historical racism comes into place. Because when the person defending himself is white, people understand fear. They understand size difference. They understand being cornered. They understand being picked on, and pushed and physically handled by someone bigger. But when the person defending himself is black, suddenly everybody wants to slow the facts down. Hold on. They want to sanitize the physical contact and act like the black kid was supposed to just take it. You see? You understand? See, black people aren't treated like we have the same right to defend ourselves. And I'm not just talking about physical self-defense. I'm talking about defending our dignity, our humanity, our families, our communities, and our right to exist without being degraded. That's why people love to say the N-word. They want to say the N-word, right? And what do they say right after that if you say something about it? Huh? They say it's just a word. They say it's just a word because they want the freedom to insult black people without consequences. They want to use the word degrading racial, this insult, this racial insult, one of the worst words in American history, and then they want to control how black people respond to it. They want to provoke black people, humiliate black people, and drag black people back into the language of slavery, Jim Crow, lynching, segregation, and racial terror. But the moment black people react, the reaction becomes the problem. And that's the double standard. Because, see, the society doesn't treat every insult like it's just a word, do they? See, when other groups are insulted or mocked or degraded, institutions respond, companies respond, governments respond, advocacy groups respond, media responds, schools respond, employers respond, people get fired. People get banned, people get put on a list, people lose sponsorships, people lose speaking events, people lose contracts, people lose access to countries. So don't tell me words don't matter. See, the real rule is this. Words matter when other groups are offended. But when black people are offended, suddenly everybody becomes a free speech philosopher. Look at how racial and ethnic slurs are treated in workplaces and institutions. The EEOC says racial harassment, it can include racial slurs and offensive remarks and derogatory comments based on race, color, ethnicity, or national origin. And that means words can help create a hostile environment. So when people use slurs against Asians, y'all have heard those slurs, whether they're Japanese or Chinese. When they use them against Hispanics and Arabs and Jewish people or any other group, the law doesn't simply say, relax, it's just a word. The law recognizes that words can be part of discrimination and harassment. Look at the anti-Asian slurs like the terms like Jap or Chink or Chinaman. That language caused serious consequences. In 2012, ESPN fired an employee and suspended another one after the chink in the armor headline was used in connection with Jeremy Lin. For you all who don't remember him, he's a basketball player of Asian descent. One of the first and most prominent, one of the most prominent. You understand? They got rid of them. In 2014, the Miami Dolphins, they had a bullying investigation and included allegations that players used slurs like Jap, Chinaman, and Chink against a Japanese assistant trainer. So society clearly understands that racial slurs aren't harmless when other groups are targeted. And we want to talk about anti-Semitism. When people offend Jewish organizations or repeat anti-Semitic ideas, groups like the Anti-Defamation League, they don't just shrug that and say it's just a word. ADL tracks the anti-Semitic rhetoric. It maintains hate symbol databases. It monitors public figures. It publishes reports and identifies language and symbols and movements and folk connected to anti-Semitism. Look at Kanye West. That's the most obvious example. After his anti-Semitic comments in 2022, the ADL published material about him. They talked about the companies he was tied to, and his public image and business relationships. It took a hit. Hell, in 2026, the United Kingdom blocked Kanye West from even coming over to their country because of his anti-Semitism. So words do matter. And let's talk about Islam, because we're not just talking about racism. You guys know Solomon Rushdie? This dude published something called the Satanic Verses in 1988. And in February 1989, the Ayatollah Khomeini issued a order, we'll call it a fatwa, calling for this man's death because of a book with words. This man had to live under police protection for years. And hell, his translator was murdered in 1991. Anybody close to him was scared. His other translator in Italy and Norway were attacked. Rushdie himself was attacked on stage in New York in 2022. I'm not justifying any of that violence. I'm just saying the world clearly understands that words can create massive consequences depending on how you use them. Look at this. Then there was this cartoon about Muhammad. It's called the Muhammad cartoon. This 2005, this Danish newspaper, I forget what it's called, the Jylland Posten. They published this cartoon and it depicted the Prophet Muhammad, peace be unto him. I'm not Muslim, but I do understand that it goes against their religion to produce photographs of the Prophet Muhammad. But what that did was it set off global protests and in some places violence. In 2015, you had gunmen run up into these offices of what's called the Charlie Hebdo office in Paris after the magazine published cartoons of Muhammad. 12 people got killed. These are words and pictures. In 2020, a French teacher named Samuel Paty was beheaded after showing cartoons of Muhammad during a lesson about free speech in class. Again, I am in no way defending violence. I'm pointing out that society knows insults, knows that insulting people, sacred identity is going to cause an explosive response. So why is it that Black dignity, why is that the only dignity that everybody wants to debate? Why is it that we have to have a question about why these other people shouldn't use the N-word? Why is it that when someone attacks Jewish people, people understand why the ADL responds? When somebody insults Islam or the Prophet Muhammad, peace be unto him, people understand the Muslim outrage. They tell you don't do it. When somebody comes up with an anti-Asian slur, people understand why it can cost someone a job. When somebody uses an ethnic slur for Mexicans or Arabs or Italians or Polish people or Chinese people or Japanese people, Vietnamese people, all these other people, right? Why do they understand that that insult has history and weight? But when it's Black people, everybody says it's just a word. That's the point. They don't say the N-word is just a word because it has power. They say it because they want Black people to have no power in response to it. They want the right to disrespect Black people and then demand that Black people respond politely. They want to throw the rock and then lecture us about how loudly we should scream. And this isn't free speech. That's social control. The N-word isn't just a sound. It's not just letters. It's the language of the slave auction. It's the language of the brutal slave plantations. It's the language of the lynch mob. It's the language of the racist police and employers and judges and teachers and neighbors and mobs that used to remind Black people that we were supposed to stay in our place. So when somebody uses the word against Black people, they're not just saying something offensive. They're reaching into history and they're pulling out a weapon. And then society tells black people we're not supposed to react. And that's the part I'm talking about. Black people aren't supposed to defend ourselves because society doesn't believe that black people have the same right to dignity or anger or fear or outrage, or other groups to be offended. And other groups get institutional protection. Other groups get advocacy organizations. Other groups get people banned and fired and canceled and investigated and disciplined or placed on a public watch list. But black people are told to calm down. And that's why the N-word example matters, because it exposes the rule. And the rule isn't that words don't matter. The rule is that words used against black people are supposed to matter less, because we're not supposed to have a self-defense. And if black people respond too strongly, let's say, for instance, you minding your business at the track meet, talking to your homeboy, and some white boy come up to you and push you, and you respond strongly by jumping up and hitting him in the chest with a knife, the whole conversation changes. See? Nobody wants to talk about the disrespect. Nobody wants to talk about the history of racism. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that there was a provocation. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that somebody tried to humiliate you. They only want to talk about your reaction. And see, that's how the caste system protects itself. It gives everybody else the right to be offended, but it tells black people to be mature. It gives everybody else the right to demand consequences, but it tells black people to walk away. It gives everybody else the right to defend their identity and their personhood, but it tells black people that our identity is too sensitive and too emotional, too angry, too violent, too political. So the N-word isn't just a word. You see? It's only just a word when black people are the target. And it's not just words. What did I say? Black people aren't supposed to defend ourselves. Now we talk about the words. Let's talk about the physicality. Y'all heard of the Second Amendment? Somebody type 2A. Here in America, we treat the right to bear arms like a sacred right. You think Jesus came down and wrote it in the Constitution himself? Somebody type hallelujah in the chat room. See, the Second Amendment is sacred until black people use it. And see, that's the part that people don't want to talk about. Are you learning something? See, America loves to talk about guns, freedom, self-defense, and the right to bear arms. But historically, when black people exercised that same right, the country got nervous. Suddenly the conversation changed. Suddenly gun rights weren't so absolute. Suddenly armed self-defense became dangerous, threatening, and unacceptable. That's exactly what happened with the Black Panther Party in California. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was founded in 1966 in Oakland, California by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. The whole point was that black communities were being over-policed, abused, and brutalized, and nobody was protecting us. So the Panthers decided they'd monitor the police. Somebody tried to keep an eye on them. They decided they'd keep an eye on them. We're going to watch y'all. Somebody type watching y'all. We're going to keep an eye on you all. They followed the police, they observed the traffic stops in the black communities, and they watched how the officers treated black people in Oakland. And then they did it while openly carrying guns, because at the time, California law, like many other states, allowed people to openly carry loaded firearms in public as long as they weren't concealed and weren't brandished unlawfully. And that's the part people leave out. See, the Panthers weren't just running around randomly with guns. They were using the law as it existed. They were exercising their 2A. They studied the law. They knew the rules. They knew how far they had to stand. I think it was like 10 feet away from the police. They knew what they could say. They knew what they could carry. And they were making a political point. If white Americans can claim the right to armed self-defense, then black Americans can claim the right too. And that scared California And guess what happened? Change the law. In 1967, the Republican Assembly, Don Mulford, introduced what became known as the Mulford Act. The bill was aimed at stopping black people from openly carrying loaded firearms in public without a permit. Everybody knew it. They knew what he was driving at. It was aimed at the Black Panthers and their armed police patrols in Oakland, California. And the Panthers were not the only people in California who could openly carry, but they were the people whose open carry suddenly made lawmakers uncomfortable. I thought we loved 2A. Then came the moment that made history. On May 2nd, 1967, about 30 armed black men, Black Panthers, went to the California State Capitol in Sacramento to protest the Mulford Act. They walked into the Capitol carrying rifles and shotguns, and Bobby Seale read a statement against the bill. And the Panthers' message was clear. The government was trying to disarm black people because black people had started using the same Second Amendment rights white people claim for themselves as holy. And that's why people say black men stormed the California Capitol. They didn't go there hiding. They didn't sneak in. They showed up in public, armed and disciplined and political. They were saying you can't praise the Second Amendment when white people use it and then rewrite the rules when black people use it. And what happened next proves the point. Governor Ronald Reagan, who later became a conservative hero of the Republican Party, supported the Mulford Act. He signed it into law in 1967. And Reagan reportedly said there's no reason for citizens to be carrying loaded weapons in the street, and later said the Mulford Act wouldn't create hardship for the honest citizen. And that's a long way from the modern conservative talking point that gun rights are absolute, isn't it? It was convenient. And it wasn't just Reagan. The National Rifle Association supported the Mulford Act. Got to get these guns out of these N-words' hands. Damn it. Hell no. Well, what about our Second Amendment rights? Second be damned. We got to get these guys out of here. Yeah. See, that lesson is hard to miss. Gun rights were treated differently when black people were the ones carrying the gun. So when people say the Second Amendment was gutted when black people showed up at the California Capitol, that's what they mean. The legal right to open carry existed. Black men used it. And once black men used it in a visible, organized political way, California moved to restrict that law. That's how the caste system works. Because again, black people are not allowed to defend themselves. You understand? Are y'all seeing the correlation? Black people this is the unwritten rule. This ain't law. This is the unwritten social structure. This is social caste system. You learning something? See, the country says black people should obey the law. The Panthers obeyed the law. The country says black people should know their rights. The Panthers knew their rights. The country says black people should protect their communities. The Panthers tried to protect their communities. But once black people use the same laws and the same rights everybody else claimed, the system changed the rules. That's why this history matters to the larger point. Shout out to Urban Eagle. Black people aren't allowed to defend themselves the same way other Americans are. If white men stand outside the state capitol with rifles, and I'm not talking about the California Capitol, I'm talking about, let's say Washington, D.C., right? They start talking about liberty. They start jumping in there looking for legislators. They call them patriots. Matter of fact, they'll set up $1 billion slush fund and pardon as many of them as they can and give them an apology. You'll get an apology from the president of the United States. If black men do it, lawmakers call an emergency and rewrite the Constitution. That's exactly what happened. Now, there's a reason people talk about the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Y'all know what happened to them? What happened to the Black Panther Party, family? Are we learning? Some of them became lawyers, some of them became legislators, but a lot of them went to jail. A lot of them still in jail. See, the Black Panther Party is easier for America to turn into a warning. They put out movies every now and then. They talk about how they went up in that boy's house and shot him with his girlfriend. And the message becomes, see, this is what happens when black people try to defend themselves against violence. The image scared America. So America turned the Panthers into a symbol of dangerous black militancy. But the other armed black groups are more inconvenient because they don't fit that simple story. The Black Panther Party didn't even create the Black Panther name or symbol. Did y'all know that? Did you all know that the Black Panther, that Black Panther symbol wasn't even made in Oakland, California? Shout out to Next Level. Did you know that? Who knew that? That Black Panther symbol. Well, let me say this. I think it's called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization created that symbol. You see? And there was some people from SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coalition. Their organizers carried the symbol to the wider Black Power movement. So in 1965, you had SNCC organizers like Stokely Carmichael, who actually later on became the Black Panther Party's honorary prime minister. He was working with the residents of Lowndes County, Alabama. It's a rural black belt county known for very violent white resistance and voter suppression. And black residents there formed an independent political party called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, the LCFO, because many black voters couldn't read well. If you can't read, what? Right? Now, Alabama election law required parties to use visual symbols on the ballot because they knew folk couldn't read. So the white Democrats, because they couldn't read either, they used the white rooster. So the white Democrat, they couldn't read, they used the white rooster. The LCFO, the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, they used the Black Panther. So when you saw the Black Panther, that's who you voted for. SNCC own history says that the LCFO chose the Panther because as a local founder, a man named John Hewitt explained, the Black Panther doesn't bother anybody. Somebody type mind your business. The Black Panther is minding his business. But when you push, it pushed back. You see? And it finally comes out and it destroys whatever's in front of it. That was the message. Black people weren't looking for trouble, but they weren't helpless either. And see, that group used the Black Panther as a symbol of black political power and strength, dignity, and self-defense. And then Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale and the Oakland Black Panthers, they later adopted that symbol and carried it into a different kind of movement. Now, again, you have other groups like that, the Deacons of Defense. Or really, it's called the Deacons for Defense and Justice. It was founded in 1964 in Jonesboro, Louisiana. And these were mostly black veterans, many of them men who served in World War II and Korea. Shout out to all my veterans. I haven't given you all a shout out in a minute. I wish we all would give more credit to our veterans. Our veterans have really helped push the civil rights, and they pushed Black America's progress to the forefront. It's the veterans. When you really start looking at American history, it's the black veterans and sailors and soldiers and Marines and airmen who have really pushed this country to respect us and honor us. Let's keep that in mind. Hand clap for the black veterans. Okay? But now, when I talk about the Deacons of Defense for Justice, these men had come home from war. They weren't interested in begging violent white men not to kill them. They believed in armed self-defense. What else would a soldier do? They protected civil rights workers. They protected black communities. They stood guard against the KKK. And they made it clear that if the law wouldn't protect black people had the right to protect ourselves. And that's why those groups are dangerous to the story America likes to tell. They never tell you about that, do they? Because they prove black people didn't just march and sing and pray and get beat up on TV. Black people also organized. Black people armed themselves. Black people protected our communities. Black people studied power, and black people defended ourselves. Because, see, the deacons didn't just talk about self-defense. They practiced it. And in many places, it worked. They weren't trying to overthrow the government. That's not what we were about. We weren't trying to start a race war. We weren't trying to We were just trying to keep black folk alive. What they were saying was, you're not going to bomb our homes and shoot up our cars and beat our people up and terrorize our kids and expect us to sit here and be helpless. That's all they were saying, period. And these men were former military, U.S. military, and they were disciplined, they were armed, they knew how to handle themselves. Many of them were members of the church. And so because of that, the white folk had to take them serious. They had to think twice. And that's the part America doesn't want to teach. See, the deacons of defense are not useful to the helpless black victim story that y'all like to listen to and people like to preach at you. So they're not useful to the story that says black people only survive because nice white people finally changed their heart. They're not useful to that story that says the civil rights movement was about singing and marching and praying and getting beat up by white folk and bit by dogs. See, the deacons remind everybody that nonviolence often survived because armed black men were standing somewhere real close by, making sure the Klan didn't come through and didn't get too comfortable. And that's why you hear about Martin Luther King, you hear about Selma, Alabama, and lunch counters and dogs and fire hoses. But you don't hear about armed black men guarding homes and patrolling streets and escorting civil rights workers and making sure white folk acting like terrorists understood that there was going to be some consequences. Somebody type consequences in the chat room. Huh? The deacons are a problem for the official story because they show black men defending black people and getting away with it. So they don't become a national symbol the same way that the Panthers did. They don't get a cartoon. They don't get a Marvel character named after them. Somebody type Black Panther. Somebody type Wakanda Forever in the chat room. You don't get that. Huh? They're not placed in the public imagination the same way as the one who got shot and killed or jailed for the cause. They're hoping that they'll eventually, fade away. We'll stop thinking about it. Then you got pesky people like me that keep bringing it up. But see, here's the thing. Their armed resistance proves something important. Black people armed self-defense wasn't just a theory. It was real. It was organized. It was disciplined. And sometimes it works. And that's why they don't tell about this in the history. And we can talk about the slave rebellions. It's the same reason they don't teach full history of slavery. But how can you not teach about slave rebellion? People act like enslaved black people just accepted slavery until Abraham Lincoln graciously showed up and signed a piece of paper and told us we was free on Juneteenth. Shout out to DL 9677. Somebody type Juneteenth. That's a lie. From the beginning, enslaved black people resisted. We ran away. We broke tools. We slowed down work. We poisoned our masters. We killed their kids. We burnt down their property. We formed our own little communities way out in the bushes and the swamp. We fought on ships. We fought the enemy slaveholders during war. And we rebelled a lot. Historians have documented more than 250 uprisings and attempted uprisings involving 10 more enslaved black people before the Civil War. That's 250. Slavery was only like 256 years. So you had one a year, but we never hear about that. Some people say it's even more. If you talk about the small stuff that wasn't documented, just depends on how you count the rebellions. Conspiracies, attempted uprisings. So this idea that black people didn't fight back is false. Again, the whole reason Karmelo Anthony is on trial and the public opinion is so offended is because black people aren't supposed to defend themselves. And the reason they don't think we're supposed to defend ourselves is because they don't teach the history of black people defending ourselves in this country. We have fought back. In 1526, enslaved Africans rebelled at San Miguel de Guadalupe, one of the earliest European settlements, what later became the United States. In 1712, the enslaved Africans rebelled in New York. This is 1712. 1739, the Stono Rebellion happened in South Carolina. In 1800, the Gabriel Prosser was accused of planning a major uprising in Virginia. In 1811, the German Coast Uprising in Louisiana. It involved hundreds, something up to 500 enslaved black people marching to New Orleans. 1822, Denmark Vesey was accused of organizing a major revolt in Charleston. 1831, we know about Nat Turner and his rebellion in Southampton County, Virginia. That's not one isolated event. That's a pattern, 250 of those. And that pattern tells you something about black people. It tells you black people were never naturally submissive. Black people were never happy in slavery. Black people were never content being on the bottom. Black people were always looking for a way out, a way up, and a way to fight back. But America doesn't like to tell that story. Because if you start teaching black children and white children and every other group of people that come to this country that black people resisted, then you teach them that resistance is part of our inheritance. If you teach them about the deacons for defense, then you teach them that black people defend their communities with discipline and courage. If you teach them the real Black Panther story, then you teach them that black people studied the law, used the law, carried weapons, legally fed children, built clinics, and challenged the state. And that's why the history gets narrow. They want black people resistance to be either invisible or criminal. That's why it gets criminalized when you defend yourself. They want black people to be victims and entertainers and workers and athletes and singers and preachers and martyrs. They want black people to be defenders. They don't want black people to be strategists. They don't want black people to be armed citizens. They don't want black people who understood the law and use it. They don't want black people to people who said, no, you're not going to do that to us anymore. That's the point. Black people aren't allowed to defend themselves, not even in history. And when we defend ourselves in real life, they call us dangerous. When we defend ourselves in real life, right? When we defend ourselves in the courtroom, they label us as aggressive. When we defend ourselves politically, our right to vote, somebody write, vote your interest in the chat room. We're called radical. When we defend ourselves with guns, they change the law. When history shows that black people defended ourselves successfully, they bury that story. And that's why the Deacons for Defense matter, and that's why slave rebellions matter, and that's why Black Panthers matter, because all three of these stories expose a lie. Black people have always defended ourselves, and we have a right to defend ourselves. America just doesn't like telling that part. Now, society like black people aren't, you know, that breaks the caste system. You understand? The whole system works only if black people stay in the position assigned to us. Harmed, insulted, controlled, police, studied, judged, and explained, but not feared. Not respected, not allowed to respond with equal force. Black people can be victims, black people can be martyrs, black people can be used as symbols. But the moment black people defend ourselves, the whole society gets uncomfortable because now black people aren't staying in the role society created us. The position is convenient for society. That's the bigger issue. From slavery forward, America had to build a story that black people were lower. The story was written in the religion, law, economics, science, policing, media, culture. Black people were called inferior, dangerous, animal-like, uncivilized, emotional, violent, naturally suited to control. That wasn't an accident. That was necessary. That's what Karmelo Anthony walked into. Kid that had no previous history. And what did that do? It allowed black people to be over-incarcerated, black folk to be raped, sold, our children forced to work, segregated, over-policed, killed. How could they fully admit us as human beings? So guess what? Society created a rule. Black people can suffer, but black people can't retaliate. Black people can be afraid, but that fear won't be believed. Black people can be angry, but that anger will be treated as violence. Black people can be threatened, but if they respond suddenly, they become a threat. See that? Why is that? Why is that? Y'all still with me? Hit the number 1 button if you're still with me. Are you learning something? Because I'm putting it in context. I'm putting it in context. We got work to do. We need understanding. I need you to understand what's going on. Now we're gonna go a little deeper into the history because that's necessary. We have to. Now, somebody type BLM in the chat room. Black Lives Matter, right? I don't think Black Lives Matter. It should matter. Well, let me say this: Black life doesn't matter the same way because Black people have been placed at a lower social status in America from the beginning. That didn't happen by accident. It was built. It was taught. It was preached. It was written in the law. It was written in the economics. It was written into science, religion, politics, courts, schools, and culture. And the reason it had to be built that way is simple. You can't justify slavery and degradation if you see Black people as fully human beings. You can't justify selling mothers away from children if you see them as fully human. You can't justify whipping people and raping people and breeding people and working people to death and still calling yourself civilized if you admit those people are equal human beings, and this is what you're doing to them. So before America could justify the oppression, it had to strip Black people of our humanity. It had to create a story, and that story said Black people were inferior, dangerous, uncivilized, cursed, hell, naturally suited for labor, and need to be controlled. And that's where this whole lower social status comes from. But we need to be clear about history. Anti-Black racism is a full racial caste system. It's not ancient. It developed over time. Ancient people noticed color. Medieval Christians and Muslims sometimes attach negative meanings to Blackness. Arab and Islamic societies developed anti-Black stereotypes before the Atlantic slave system. But modern, hard, legal, scientific, economic, anti-Black caste systems, right, that still affect America was mainly built between the 1400s and the 1800s. Then it expanded through law and science and religion. Before Islam and before the Atlantic slave trade, there was color prejudice. But it wasn't the same thing as the modern racial caste system. In ancient Mediterranean worlds, Greeks, Romans, they knew Africans and Egyptians and Nubians and Ethiopians and other dark-skinned people. They also enslaved people. But ancient slavery wasn't the same as modern racial slavery. Slaves could be Gauls, they could be Germans, they could be Greeks, Slavs, North Africans, and all sorts of people. Now, if you look at some of those people, the Gauls, they look like the modern day Swiss or Northern Italians. Basically, they look white. We call them white. The Greeks, they look like Mediterranean people. Dark hair, dark brown, olive skin. The Slavs, they look like Russians. You see, they look like Polish people. They look like people from Czechoslovakia, basically white people. The North Africans, they were lighter brown, olive-looking people. Some were mixed. Some were distinctly Negro in their features. But the point isn't that ancient societies had no prejudice. The point is that ancient slavery became organized. Ancient Greeks and Romans noticed skin color. You see? This anti-Black caste system was made. It wasn't natural. But they had to develop it. You see? We could talk about religion. And when I look at religion, it's think about this. It's one of the biggest contradictions in the whole world. The Bible itself complicates this whole white Christian nationalist thing. The Bible world was not Scandinavia. It wasn't Northern Europe. It was Egypt. It was Canaan. It was Israel. It was Mesopotamia. It was Ethiopia. It was Kush. It was the Eastern Mediterranean. The Suez Canal is modern. But the land bridge between Northeast Africa and Southwest Asia was always a zone of migration and trade. It was mixed. When you look at the Bible, they talk about Cush. Those are lands in Egypt or below. These are black people. It's the present-day Sudan or Ethiopia. Moses' wife was a Cushite, a black woman. You see? So the later move was historically absurd. Europeans took a Middle Eastern and Northeast African religious world and whitened it and it culturally and turned it into their version of the Holy Bible, and then used that same religious tradition to justify putting African people at the bottom. And that's how powerful religion can be when people want to dominate other people. They can take a belief system that came out a world filled with Africans, Middle Eastern, and Mediterraneans, and then justify oppressing those same people with it. Shout out to Samson Killer. That's what happened. That's how religion was used. Same thing goes for Islam. They use Islam. Early Islam had universal ideas and anti-tribal elements, but Islamic Empire still developed the slave system. How'd that happen? Over time, African slaves were taken into North Africa and the Middle East and Persia and Arabia and the Indian Ocean world. And this wasn't identical to the Atlantic chattel slavery, but anti-black stereotypes did develop in these Islamic societies. By the medieval period, you had Arab and Muslim writers associated black Africans with civility and inferiority. I'm not saying that Islam as a whole invented anti-blackness. It doesn't mean every Muslim society treated black people the same way, but it does show that anti-black racial thinking existed in parts of Islamic intellectual worldviews before the modern slave trade because it was convenient. They needed it to justify slavery. Then you had the Europeans show up. They needed a reason to justify slavery. So they used religion. Even the Pope. He authorized the Portuguese king to subdue and enslave pagans and other non-Christians. At first, European enslavement was justified as Christian war against non-Christians, but once Africans became the labor source for the New World, the justification hardened around blackness. It went from they are heathens to they're naturally inferior. And that change was necessary because many Africans became Christian. And once baptism could no longer justify freedom, Europeans needed something deeper than religion. They needed race, and they utilized it. They needed it for the labor force. After 1492, when Columbus got lost on the ocean blue, Spain and Portugal built empires in America. They used indigenous populations, which were devastated by disease and war and forced labor. And so they needed another labor force for the sugar mining and the tobacco and the rice, and later the cotton. The Atlantic plantation system became a machine. That machine needed bodies. African labor became central because Europeans could buy, transport, inherit, insure, mortgage, and exploit African labor. So that's what they did. It was convenient. So they used theology to bless it. They created science to explain it. They created it, and it was normalized. This is how the racial caste system was normalized. And then they utilized laws. 1619, Africans arrived in Virginia, but the fully developed racial caste system didn't appear all at once. It was built step by step. John Punch case, 1640. John Punch was an African man in Virginia who ran away with 2 European servants. The European servants received some additional years as indentured servants. John Punch was sentenced to life in servitude. You are now officially a slave for life. That was the early signs of the law treating the African status different. See? In 1677, Virginia began to pass another law. At that, they said baptism can no longer be used to free enslaved people. So your religion isn't good enough. You're still going to be a slave. So Virginia protected slavery by saying even Christian black people could be slaves. In other words, they moved the line. And when religion could no longer do the work, race did the work. Again, they used the curse of Ham. This is what they did. Look, even though the biblical text doesn't say black people were cursed into slavery, they used Christianity to tell enslaved black people to obey while slaveholders ignored the moral contradiction of owning human beings. Think about that. At the same time this is going on, you have people like Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Independence, language saying that all men are created free, except black people. Think about that. But they had to do it to justify slavery. They had it. They had to. We talk about law, we talk about economics, we're talking about religion, we're talking about science, we're talking about a color caste system that was built over hundreds of years, and that caste system still affects how black people see life today. When black person is harmed, society asks what that black person did wrong. When a black person is attacked, society asks why the black person didn't walk away. Isn't that the same questions they asking about Karmelo Anthony? They gave that boy 35 years. Did y'all hear that? 35 years. This boy's 19 years old. When a black person is afraid, society doubts the fear. When black people is angry, society calls that anger dangerous. When black person defends himself, society acts like he had no right to defend himself, right? That's what we see, right? I'm just explaining it to you. You might not like what I had to say. I'm just giving you the rules to operate by, family. Many of you all didn't like the fact that I said, hey, you can't use excessive force in response to somebody's normal force, or you can't use dangerous, deadly force. I'm trying to save you from a 35-year bid. Do y'all want to hear what I have to say, or you want to be mad? You can be mad all you want to, but I'm telling you, you need to act accordingly. At least I'm decent enough to give you the historical background so you can understand why we are the way we are, so you can at least have some understanding of why we act accordingly. That's what lower status does. That's what a lower social status does. It makes your pain negotiable. It makes your fear unbelievable. It makes your death debatable. It makes your life easier to dismiss. So when we say black life doesn't matter, we aren't saying black life has no value. We're saying America has never treated black life as having equal value. America created a system where black people were placed at the bottom, and it is convenient. And every institution was used to keep us there. Religion, science, law, education, media, the justice system, politics, economic culture. This is where we at. That's the point. Black people have a lower social status because America and the broader and Western world spent hundreds of years building a racial caste system that may put blackness at the bottom. And when blackness is placed at the bottom, black life becomes easier to disrespect, easier to blame, easier to criminalize, easier to cage, easier to ignore, easier to kill. Somebody type 35 years. Since the 1970s forward, mass incarceration, the caste system has changed clothes. Again, crime, welfare, drugs, urban disorder, law and order, those became coded ways to mark black people as dangerous and lower. Anti-black racism didn't appear from nowhere in 1619. We talked about that history, but this is where we are now. You see? They could have given up the money, white folk. They could have fed people. They could have paid laborers. They could have stopped raping enslaved black women. They could have stopped selling our children. They could have stopped building wealth off forced labor. But instead, they stripped the whole black segment of the world population of its humanity because it was easier to oppress people after they convinced themselves that we weren't fully people. And they needed it. They did it for the money. And see, here's the other thing, family. I want y'all to listen to. You're not going to like this. I'm going to go back somewhere you don't like again. But you're going to listen anyway. When I'm talking about how society as a whole has been trained to see black life as less valuable, that's not just white people. And it's not just the other minorities and the Asians either. That includes black people. I'm talking about you all. And see, that's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Black people don't even value black lives, do you? Let's be honest. What's the bigger threat to black life? Is it white people killing black people? Is that the biggest threat? No, it's not. The biggest threat to black people is black people killing black people. And that doesn't mean white police killings don't matter. But if we're talking about raw numbers of dead black bodies, then most black victims aren't killed by white people. Most black victims are killed by other black people. And that's why the phrase Black Life Matters has always been incomplete. If black life only matters when offenders are white, then black life doesn't really matter, does it? What matters is the politics of the offender. What matters is the racial storyline. What matters is whether the death can be used to prove white racism. So when we have to be honest, and I'm just talking to black folk, listen, you ain't got to like what I'm saying. I don't care. Somebody type I don't care in the chat room. See, black death only matters when it has a political value. And the data makes this impossible to avoid. In 2023, black people had a homicide victimization rate of 21.3 per 100,000 people. That's a lot. White people had a rate of 3.2 per 100,000 people. That means black people were murdered at more than 6 times the rate of white people. So if we're serious about black life, that should be treated as a national emergency. But it's not treated that as a national emergency, is it? Because most of those black victims aren't killed by white police officers or white vigilantes or non-black defendants, are they? Most are killed by other black people. And that's where the caste system becomes internal. It's not just that white life outranks black life in America. It's that black life has been so devalued that even black people can become numb and have become numb to black death. If a little black child gets shot in the neighborhood, and you know what people are going to say? They're going to say, that's sad. They're going to put his face on a t-shirt and keep it moving. If a black woman goes missing, her family has to beg people to share the flyer. A black man gets murdered by another black man, and unless the facts are shocking enough to go viral, the story just disappears. But let a white cop kill a black person, and now everybody knows and cares about it. That's the problem. Black life shouldn't need a white offender to become valuable. People love to say black on black crime, okay? And it doesn't prove that we're uniquely violent. That's not what but the data doesn't, that's not what it shows. Data shows that most murders are intraracial. In other words, most white people are killed by white people. Black people usually kill black people. Hispanic people kill Hispanic people, Asian on Asian, etc. Because most of those murders are largely about proximity. People usually kill people that are nearby. See? For instance, 84% of white homicides killed by white people. 88% of black homicides killed by black people. That's between 20 and 2023. It shows that 75% of Hispanic homicide victims are Hispanic offenders. It shows it 65% of Asian homicide victims are killed by Asian offenders. So the issue isn't black people are the only group with intra-racial violence. The issue is that America only weaponizes interracial violence when it's black people involved. Nobody says white on white crime is a problem. Every time a white person kills another person, nobody treats white on white murder as proof that white people don't value white life. Nobody says white culture is defective every time a white man kills his wife and his children and his co-workers and his classmates or people in the neighborhood. But when black people kill black people, suddenly the whole race is on trial. But still, somebody type, but still, we can't hide behind that point. White people kill white people too, and black on black crime is often used in a racist way. But none of that changes the fact that black people are being murdered at more than 6 times the rate of white people by black people. But see, we only get loud when the killer is white. We only organize when the story fits the civil rights frame. We only care when the death can be blamed on somebody outside the community. That's why I say black life doesn't matter enough to black people. That's the real issue. The only time America consistently gives black death full value is when the killer is white or when the case can be framed as a racial story. And that's why white police killings get played over and over. That's why white vigilante killing of a black person becomes a national news. That's why non-black business owners killing a black child who ran 130 yards to get away from him can become a national racial flashpoint. And I'm not saying those cases don't deserve attention. They do. They deserve scrutiny. They deserve outrage. But if we only care, then we aren't really defending black life. We're defending black life only when it can be used to indict somebody. And the uncomfortable truth is that the media isn't forcing this on us, are they? The media is responding to what black people watch. The media gives black people what they have an appetite for. The reason black on black homicide doesn't dominate the news cycle isn't because it doesn't happen. It's because most black people don't watch it. It doesn't fit the story we want to tell ourselves about ourselves, does it? Black on black crime is very inconvenient. You see? See, in that story, black people are victims, but black people are also the perpetrators. You can't easily divide the world into oppressors and oppressed in that regard. You can't point to a white cop or a white vigilante or a racist law or a racist institution and say, there's the problem. That's hard. It's a lot of gymnastics, intellectual gymnastics. The story becomes complicated. It forces us to look inward. It forces us to ask some hard questions about ourselves, about our culture, about violence, about family structure, about community leadership, about accountability and personal responsibility. A lot of people don't want to have that conversation, do you? What we want is a villain. We want somebody else to blame. We want a story where we're clearly the victim and somebody else is clearly the aggressor. We don't always need to be the good guy, but we certainly don't want to ever be the bad guy. See, that's easier. That's cleaner. That's safer. And that's more emotionally satisfying, but it also is not honest. And that's what we are not here, is not honest. Think about what happens when a black person kills another black person. Most people scroll right past it. A black teenager gets shot by another black teenager in the hood, and the local story is gone in 2 days. A black woman gets unalived by her boyfriend or husband, the story disappears before he hits the press. Child gets caught in the crossfire. Nobody knows about it outside the immediate community. Nobody pays attention, but let an offender be white. And suddenly the entire country's enraged. There was a time in the 1980s and the 1990s when people openly talked about drive-by shootings and gang violence and homicide in the black community. Today, most of the conversations have disappeared from the national discussion. They might say Chicago. Chicago has become shorthand for black on black violence. But even then, most people don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear statistics. They don't want to hear names. Shout out to Black Sands. They don't want to hear about victims. They don't want solutions. They don't want accountability. They just Change the channel. And that's why this isn't a media problem. It's an audience problem. The media follows attention. The attention follows the appetite. And our appetite is for stories that reinforce what we already believe. Again, if Black life truly mattered equally, then the identity of the killer wouldn't determine the level of outrage. If a dead Black child matters when a white police officer kills him, then a dead Black child should matter when a Black gang member kills him too. You see? But that's not how we behave. Too often, Black death only becomes nationally valuable when it can be attached to a racial narrative. And when that happens, we're not measuring the value of life. We're measuring the usefulness of the story. That's the point. And if our level of concern changes because or based on the race of the offender, then the issue isn't just Black death. The issue is which version of Black death fits the narrative we're willing to consume. And that's where we fail. That's where we fail. And that's a problem, in my opinion. My humble opinion. Now, as I said earlier, Black people are not allowed to defend ourselves. And that's why the N-word is something that I discuss. Again, it's just a word, right? That's what they say, but they say that because they want to be able to degrade Black people without consequences. Black people aren't allowed to defend ourselves even if we're attacked. And when we do, suddenly everybody wants to lecture us about maturity, restraint, and such. That's a double standard. Physical defense, physical self-defense. When white people defend themselves, society understands fear. When non-Black groups defend their dignity, society understands their outrage. When Black people defend ourselves, society starts looking for reason to call us aggressive. Black person doesn't get to be scared first. A Black person has to prove fear after the fact. Because see, again, society acts like Black people aren't supposed to defend ourselves because Black self-defense forces society to admit that Black people are fully human. It forces people to admit we fear, we feel humiliation, we feel anger, we have dignity, and we have boundaries. We have a right to say no. We have a right to protect ourselves. And that's what this caste system does. Now, again, Black people, we're allowed to pray. We're allowed to march. We're allowed to forgive. But Black people defending themselves, we're not allowed to seek retribution. We're not allowed to seek revenge or monetary reparations, which is why people are so resistant about us getting reparations. At that point, they say we've gone too far. And that brings us back to this Karmelo Anthony case. Did y'all hear this boy got 35 years? 35. 35 years. No criminal record. However you feel about Karmelo Anthony, however you feel about Austin Metcalf, it's a tragedy. A 17-year-old boy lost his life, and another boy's going to prison for 35 years. But we still have to be honest about this case and what it's really forcing us to look at. Karmelo Anthony defended himself. Some of you may believe he went too far. The jury believe he went too far. Some of you believe he used too much force. The jury believed he used too much force. You believe that the outcome was tragic and unnecessary. I would agree. But here's what we need to understand. Karmelo Anthony didn't just randomly walk up on Austin Metcalf and stick a knife in him. He was minding his business. This whole conflict was brought to him and put on his front door, relatively speaking. The child was at it was a rainstorm. He was sitting under a tent at a high school track meet. One boy. He wasn't in there playing the drums. He wasn't blowing the saxophone. He wasn't keeping up a racket. And then another boy tried to make him leave. And that's why all that history that I went through matters. Because the minute a black person says, I was protecting myself, society doesn't hear it the same way. See, when Officer Cortez put Karmelo in handcuffs after the stabbing, Karmelo said, I was protecting myself. He said he put his hands on me. Those weren't some lawyer's words that came out in the courtroom for the first time. Those were the words of a 17-year-old child in the immediate aftermath of a violent encounter. And yet the public conversation still starts from the assumption that Karmelo had no right to feel threatened. That's the point. If the facts are that Karmelo was sitting down, Austin was standing over him, Austin put hands on him. The confrontation had gone on for several minutes. The weather was bad. Centennial didn't have his tent set up, and Karmelo had nowhere obvious to go. Then why are we why are people acting like Carmelo's fear doesn't count? Somebody type 35 years. Why are people acting like his body didn't matter? Do you want people touching all over you? People you don't know pushing you? Why are people acting like he was supposed to sit there and absorb the pressure, absorb the disrespect, absorb the physical contact, and wait until everybody else agreed that he had permission to be afraid? And that's what I mean when I say black people aren't allowed to defend themselves. I'm not talking about the law. I know what the law says. I spent the first hour talking to you all about the law. I know what the law says. See, this is not about, shout out to Mark the freelancer, this is not about whether the outcome was sad. Of course it's sad. Austin Metcalf is dead, his family's grieving, nobody should ignore that. But that tragedy doesn't erase the facts that came before that tragedy. And again, this is where the double standard comes in. If the roles were reversed, and you had a smaller white kid sitting under the shelter in the rainstorm, and a large black kid came over and stood over him and put hands on him and pushed him, tried to jack him up and force him to move, a lot of people would instantly understand the white kid's fear. They would have said he's being bullied. They would have said he was minding his business. They would have said he didn't know what was coming next. They'd say that the bigger kid should have kept his hands to himself. But because Karmelo is black, people want to debate whether he had the right to feel threatened or not. I'm saying the jury has already ruled. The jury felt he shouldn't have felt threatened. The jury said that his use of force was unreasonable. That's the caste system showing up in real time. Because unless you come to the same conclusion for both of those children, guess what? You subject to that caste system. You don't have to like what I'm saying. I'm just telling you what it is. It ain't hard to figure out. See, black fear doesn't get believed the same way. Black self-defense doesn't get analyzed the same way. Black anger doesn't get understood the same way. Black people are expected to take more before society admits we had a right to respond. We're expected to stay calmer, wait longer, retreat further, absorb more humiliation before anybody says, okay, now I understand why you're afraid. Where's the lie? They had a situation where a young black man was running for blocks and blocks and blocks, and he still got convicted. Young actor. The white woman said, oh, he hit me. We got video of the man running away. He still got convicted of a crime, lost his career. Y'all know who I'm talking about. I'm not sitting here telling you that people shouldn't grieve for Austin Metcalf. That's not what I'm telling you. They should. It's a sad situation. That was a baby. He's 17 years old. I'm definitely not saying that people shouldn't question Karmelo Anthony's choices. You can do that. You should. See, what I am saying is this. Don't erase Karmelo's right to defend himself just because the outcome was tragic. Don't pretend this case started at the moment the knife entered into Austin's body. This case started before that. It started with the rain. It started with the tent. It started with the confrontation. It started with who was sitting and who was standing, who put hands on who, and whether Karmelo Anthony had a reason to believe he was in danger. But see, that's the conversation people don't want to have. Because once you admit Karmelo Anthony may have been defending himself, then you have to admit a black boy's fear mattered. You have to admit a black boy's body mattered. You have to admit a black boy didn't have to sit there and be physically handled by someone else just because the crowd thought he didn't belong. That's what society struggles with. Now, what if it was a little white girl? What if it was a little white girl sitting there, a little 110-pound white girl, and some big black dude ran up on her and started pushing her, and she jumped bad on him and put a knife in his chest? Nobody in here would think that her use of force was unreasonable, would you? Because that's the most protected class. The truth is, Karmelo Anthony defended himself. The legal question was whether the jury believed that that defense was justified. But the social question is even bigger. Why is it so hard for people to believe that a black person can be afraid, can be cornered, can be threatened, can have the same human instinct to protect themselves as anybody else? And until we honestly answer that question, this situation is going to repeat. Now, I'm going to take the opportunity to read these super chats, Cash Apps, and PayPals. And then I'm going to give you this blistering closing statement, which means I got some more to say. And we're going to have a very honest conversation towards the end of this, because I'm not going to let y'all go without making you mad again, because that's what I do. This is what we do here. Okay? We tell you the truth, even if you don't like it. Because the problem with a lot of grown-ups, you don't like to be told anything. That's why you keep bumping your head. Now, somebody typed 35 years in the chat room. Was it worth it? Somebody typed 35 years in the chat room. Was it worth it? See, some of y'all are here for the circus. Some of y'all want to see the gore. That's what it is. You really don't care about Anthony. Y'all don't care about Karmelo Anthony. You forget him in a couple weeks. The truth. Shout out to Richard Pettigrew. Some of y'all don't even care about Austin either. You don't care. Metcalf, you don't care about him. You just here for the clicks and the likes. You're here for the outrage. You're here for the emotional rush. I know you. I know who you are. But that's okay. You're going to learn something too. If you learn something, I should earn something. And I want to thank the 19 people who contributed to the super chat. What's the next step for FBA people? Awareness, understanding where you are. That's why I spent that whole time period explaining what the law says. That's why I did that. Instead of having an emotional response, you need to learn the law, just like the Black Panther Party. Remember that? That's what that was about. But thank you so much, B Hunter the Spot. Appreciate you. Next up, Juan Jeezy. We never heard Karmelo version of the event because he didn't take the stand. That's why we didn't hear it. And his defense lawyers made a calculated step. Okay. Next up, who we got here? The repatriation perspective. 6548. Thank you so much. Plus, he suffers from epilepsy. What about stand your ground? They were twice his size. Where did we go? Yeah, you have a right to stand your ground. You have a right to use force, but that does not give you a license to kill. And that was what I broke down when we talked about the you have a right to use ordinary force, but the only way you can use deadly force is if you feel as though your life is in danger, or deadly force being used against you. You can't just pop up, stab somebody because somebody pushed you. That's not how the legal system works. Let's keep moving to the next person. Inspirational truth. Let me see here. How is this different from Case and Allison? I apologize. I'm not familiar with that case, but I'll maybe take the opportunity to take a look at it at some point in the future. Black Sand 6368. In this case, take the beating and call the cops. No, he could have got in there and put his hands up and fought back. He just didn't. He could have used force to defend himself. Is the type of force he chose to use. That's what I'm saying. You can't use a deadly weapon. That was what I'm saying. Okay, and that's what most folk are saying, and I think that's just common sense. You see. Next up, we need this to be taught in high school. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Black Sand. Jay Davis, can you please address how many potential jurors actually talk themselves out of jury duty? Man, you all find reasons not to go to jury duty. You got a bunion on your foot. You're not going. You got your baby's sick. You taking a vacation to Miami Beach. You know how that is. Part of the reason you don't have a lot of black jurors in the jury pools because black folk really don't want to do jury duty. And this is some of the outcomes. He needed Rick Child's lawyer. He'll say anything. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, well, Rick Child's lawyer was a good lawyer. That's why Rick Child got acquitted. Just keeping it 100. Also tell your kids not to bully. It could end you. That's true. Nobody's saying that. You the truth is, you don't know how people respond when you do something to them. And they may not always follow the law. They might think they're justified in using deadly force. You don't know who you're dealing with. Leave people alone. At no point am I saying that young man, Austin Metcalf, he should have left that boy alone. Because at the end of the day, Karmelo Anthony has a date. It's 35 years. I don't know if he's going to do all of that, but at least he has a date. So he's going to come home. He still may be able to live his life. I don't know what the judge said. I haven't looked at the actual sentencing, but at least he has a date. Okay, that's the other thing. Now, next up, who else we have here? Logical and sensible message. Salute. These youngers are raised soft. Yeah, they don't want to fight. And he just hit him in the head, fought him. This would have been over. This has been something. It's just been one of those childhood memories. But it didn't happen like that. It escalated. It escalated. But you'll have plenty of chances to fight in that penitentiary. Myron Mangus, now you have to admit this verdict conflicts with the Rick Child verdict. That's the problem, the blatant public inconsistency. Well, again, man, racism always plays a part in it, but at the end of the day, that's a different situation, okay? Because both of those people were armed, okay? The young boy, Cyrus, apparently was armed. Rick Child was armed. In this situation, Austin Metcalf did not have a knife. It wasn't a knife fight and somebody got stole. One of them had a knife. Austin Metcalf put hands on him, and Anthony escalated and stabbed him. Okay, so it's a bit different. It's not the same, but thank you so much, family. Urban Eagle, thank you for the $2 super sticker. Next level, TAC, cool if they do it. It's a problem if we do it. Hey, bro, it is what it is. This is where we at. Muslims are going to be their worst nightmare. Thank you so much, Dale 9677. Also, I'm a financial recovery, so I can't do as much as I'd like. Samson Keller, thank you so much. I still always learn from you, and this time you delivered a deluge of knowledge, my bro. Thank you so much, family. I appreciate you learning. Somebody type learn something in the chat. We got 19 super chats. We rolling. That's what's up. Thank you. So again, you guys don't owe me anything. You don't have to donate anything. I graciously appreciate the time you spend with me, but I would appreciate if you guys would subscribe to the channel if you hadn't already. As you see, I put a lot of time and energy into this because I actually want you to walk away with something. What I'm trying to do is, look, it's a lot of outrage. It's a lot of people who want to get you outraged. But after you listen to me for a little while, you have a lot more understanding. If you listen to the actual, what the actual statute says about, at least in this regard, about self-defense, you have a much better understanding as to why self-defense failed. So it doesn't make you feel hopeless. You understand, well, damn, yeah, he could have hit him. He just wasn't supposed to stab him. Y'all get that. That's basic. You can use ordinary force in response. You can't use deadly force. That's a basic lesson, right? And so now you can operate accordingly. You hanging out with somebody, and situation goes bad and y'all end up in a fight, you can't pull out a pistol and shoot the other side. You can punch, you can kick, you can use ordinary force. You can't kill people just because they throw hands, but you got to throw hands. Somebody type throw hands in the chat room. It is what it is. If you scared, stay home. But anyway, XX Locksmith, you call him a child, you call him a boy. Otherwise, you would have called him a man. Stop being manipulative. Here's your $1. Well, thank you for the $5. But which one of these people, Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony, which one of them was a man? Because by my recollection, both of them are 17. So me calling them a child, me calling them kids, that's appropriate. I'm not calling the 27-year-old man a kid. I'm calling the child. This man is a minor. These children, that wouldn't even make sense. These are minors. These are children. These are kids. What's the problem with that? He's a boy, not a man, according to the law. Is that what we're gonna follow? We're gonna follow the law. You don't have to like what I'm saying, but it's accurate. Anyway, shout out to XX Lock. He says such a liar. No, lawyer. It's not, you misspelled it. But anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate you, Mark Freelances, for the gift. And also, Dramatic City, no blacks on jury hurt because they know, put your hands on me and see. It's a warning provocation. See, the thing is, man, it's not necessarily about black people, because if you get enough black engineers and black doctors and black no people on the jury, you're gonna get the same result. Okay, you all misunderstand. Let me run this down to you. A lot of black people are tired of these YNs themselves. There's a lot of black people watching this channel right now. This wouldn't even be a racial issue. Wouldn't even be a racial issue. If we're in a situation where a young black boy stabbed another black boy, right? And it was all black jury, and it was a fist fight, and it resulted in that, they might go to jail too. Black people are not these liberal group of people. We don't believe in that. Might not have gave them 35 years, but black people are tired of that too. Everybody's tired of that. Okay? Everybody's tired of the behavior. Look, I love black people. I love you. I love you. And I know it's black people that love black people here too, but sometimes you got to love people from a distance. Am I telling the truth? Do you want to be around that? Some of this behavior that we see going on? These teen takeovers, somebody type teen takeover in the chat room. Aren't y'all, some of y'all shout out to Greg L. Again. We tired of it. Just like black people were tired of it in the 1990s, and that's why they supported Clinton on that tough on crime 1995 crime bill. We tired of it. You got a bunch of emotional kids running around here thinking they can do whatever the hell they want to do, and they are doing it. They just turning the city upside down. They turning it, making everything hard for everybody. And then these people grow up and become adults, and you still got to deal with them. I'm just saying. I told you guys this before. There's a reason why a lot of these black people watch these racist conservative commentators like Nick Fuentes. They don't like him. They don't like what he's saying. They don't like coming out of his mouth. Same thing with Charlie Kirk. The reason because they want somebody to say it. When you tell black people, hey, look, man, we need to get ourselves, they call you a sellout and all that other stuff. So you can't say anything. They just shut you down. But we have to address this issue. Absolutely. Look, if you're a young black man, you got to learn to control yourself. You can't go off on somebody and escalate just because somebody put their hands on it. That's over emotional. You're a man. You need to conduct yourself like a man. There's a reason to fight. There's a reason to defend yourself, but there's consequences. Period. And you can't be out here being no punk or being scary. You just escalate to a gun or a knife or something. You take somebody's life because you scared. It's okay to be scared. Fight anyway. That's part of being a man. And I'm not saying that Karmelo was a bad kid. For all intents and purposes, he's a good kid. No criminal record until his conviction. Good grades, good school. But look at his life now. Look at his life now. For all you black people who think, oh, yeah, he was justified. Was it worth it? See, let me go ahead and give y'all this. See, this is why I need everybody to understand something. I have 3 sons. See those pictures back there? Those are my children. No daughters. I got 3 sons. I got an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And when I send my sons out to some school function, like a track meet, I don't expect none of them to come home in a body bag. I don't expect to get a phone call from the police station telling me my son is caught a murder charge either. So before anybody gets cute with the conversation, can we all agree that what happened was extreme? A 17-year-old boy is dead, irrespective of his color, and another 17-year-old boy has got convicted of murder, and he's going to prison for 35 years. That's extreme. Now, here's the honest part. What I say publicly about my son and what I say to my son behind closed doors are 2 different things. Publicly, I'm defending my son. Publicly, I'm saying he feared for his life. Publicly, I'm saying he was under imminent threat. Publicly, I'm saying he was surrounded. He was sitting down, somebody bigger put hands on him, and he reacted because he believed he had to protect himself. And that's what I'm saying publicly because that's my son. But behind closed doors, I'm having a completely different conversation. Behind closed doors, I'm asking him what the hell he was thinking. I'm asking him why he sat there and let his ego write a check that his ass couldn't cash. I'm asking him why, if they asked him to leave, he didn't get his ass up and leave. And excuse my language. Why he didn't just get up and walk away? Or if he felt that serious about it, why did he just get on up and put in fight? Put your hands up. I'm asking him why in the hell he Why'd you bring the knife in the first place? Why did the push turn into a knife fight? I'm asking him why another 17-year-old boy had to die because he didn't want to be embarrassed in front of some girls or his friends or some athletes under a tent. Let's be real. He wasn't getting stomped out on the ground. Was Karmelo Anthony getting stomped out? Yeah, he might have had some other people from the other team around him. They weren't 4 or 5 deep kicking him in the throat and the head. I've been there before. This is another teenager. This wasn't some grown man attacking a child. Yeah, one kid had a little bit bigger, but that's life. One kid's a little smaller. Okay. They're both still kids. If my son played football and ran track, I'm asking him, you mean to tell me you never been hit on the football field? You never been pushed or knocked down on the football field? You ain't never had to handle somebody bigger than you before? Because see, in my mind, if you've been on the football field, you know exactly what physical contact feels like. And you know it's not going to kill you. So behind closed doors, I'm not letting him hide behind fear without asking some hard questions. And that's not me saying he didn't have a legal defense. I'm not saying that. That's not me saying the jury shouldn't hear self-defense. That's not me saying Austin Metcalf had a right to put his hands on my son. He didn't. Look, you don't get to walk up on somebody and put hands on them and try to move them and then get shocked when things escalate. But as a father, let me say this, as a responsible father who loves my children and wants the best for them and don't want them to get 35 years in prison or any other children get that, I'm still asking my son why he let it get there as a man. I'm asking him why he didn't get up and leave. I'm asking him why he didn't fight with his hands. I'm asking him why he pulled out a knife over a teenage schoolyard fight. Look, somebody could have got pushed, somebody could have got punched, somebody could have got embarrassed, but at least everybody would have went home alive. And that's the kind of conversation fathers have to have behind closed doors with their sons. Look, man, maybe I raised my sons different than you all. One of the craziest things I told my children that is more important to learn how to fight than read. This is when they were 4 years old. And I'm sure they was like, that's not what everybody else is telling us, Daddy. But I believed that my sons needed to know how to defend themselves. That's why I put them in martial arts. I got my 2 oldest boys. Both of them about to be 3rd-degree black belts in Shotokan. They have 2nd-degree black belts in Kung Fu. One of them has a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. I have a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Hell, my wife got a 2nd stripe blue belt in jiu-jitsu. We all know how to get down. My baby boy, he's soft as a cotton swab. I got him out there fighting too. Because I believe it's more important to know how to defend yourself than read. That's one of my mantras. That's why I put everybody in my house in martial arts. You got to fight around here. Because I don't want nobody in my house, especially my son, walking around scared. Walking through the world scared. I don't want them thinking every conflict requires a weapon for them to defend themselves. I don't want them thinking that a black eye is the end of the world or a busted lip or a broken tooth is gonna just end their life. Sometimes you gotta fight. Sometimes you're gonna lose a fight. Sometimes you're gonna get embarrassed. Sometimes you're gonna take an L. But at least you live to talk about it. That's life. But you don't put somebody in the ground because they push you unless you honestly believe you're about to suffer serious harm. That's the line. And that's what makes this case hard. Because publicly, I understand the self-defense argument. I should. I've been practicing law for 26 years. I detest the criminal practice of law. I practiced criminal law with my daddy. Didn't like not one of them. Got 3 acquittals working with my daddy. He did it for 36 years. I don't like none of that. So I understand the self-defense argument. Hell, I used to work at the courthouse. You know, when y'all, the prisoners would send that jail mail to the courthouse, as a young clerk, it'd come to me. I'll review the case. You out of here. Look, even the facts of the situation. I understand the rain. I understand the tent. I understand the size difference. I understand the fact that Karmelo was sitting there minding his business and Austin was standing over him. I understand the argument that Austin shoved him like a linebacker. I get it. I understand all that. But privately, as a father, and this is not just about fathers, mothers too. As a father, as a parent, son, your ego got you here. And some of y'all listening to me right now then got yourselves in situations because your ego got you there. Some of you grown-ups, some of you so-called grown-ups out there right now. Just like this child, your ego made you sit there when you should have got yourself up and walked away. Your ego had you still talking and made you stay in that confrontation that didn't even need to continue. Your ego made you think losing this fight was worse than losing your future. Somebody typed 35 years in the chat room. Look at the result. Look at the result. One family had to plan a funeral. Another family is planning an appeal for their child. That boy mama gonna be dead when he get out of prison, if he gets out. Because there's a whole nother level of savages in there. I bet they gonna push you. That little boy probably ain't never even been with a woman. He's never even been with a woman. And he's going to prison for the next 35 years at 19. Look at the result. Was it worth it? Huh? Was it worth it? He's going to be damn near 60 when he gets out of prison. All the best years of his life gone. Was it worth it? Calling me a goddamn sellout and all these names because I'm trying to tell y'all dumb behinds not to do this dumb. This is how the system works. Was it worth it? Do you want that for your son? Huh? Do you want it for yourself? That's why I keep saying this case is extreme all the way around. Look, man, I don't care what color Austin Metcalf is. He didn't deserve to die. And on the flip side, Karmelo Anthony doesn't deserve to have people pretend he had no right to defend himself. Both things can be true at the same time. You can believe Karmelo had a self-defense argument and had the right to still defend himself and still say the outcome is insane. You can believe Austin shouldn't have put hands on Karmelo and still say a knife over a push is a life-destroying decision. I'm going to defend my son publicly. You should defend your child publicly and still discipline him privately, because this ain't always a situation that leads to death. You got some kids right now. Y'all got some kids right now that's dealing with some BS. Somebody hit you, you hit them back harder. Okay. That's what you told your child, right? How many of you all were told that? Somebody hit you, you hit them back harder. What does that lead to? Has that helped the black community? Does that sound like de-escalation? Do we need more of that in the black community? I'm just asking. Somebody type black on black crime. Do we need more of that in the community? Has that helped us? Has that philosophy really helped advance black society over the past 100 years? I don't think so. Most of y'all are missing this conversation. Everybody wants to pick a side and act like the other side has no point. But fathers know better. Good parents know better. Mothers know better. Because if Austin Metcalf were my son, I'd be destroyed that he didn't come home. If Karmelo Anthony was my son, I'd be fighting for him. But I'd still be asking the hard questions. And if I had other children, I'd be talking to them. Because at the end of the day, two families lost something. One family lost a child forever. The other may lose their child in prison for decades. And all of this started over a rainstorm, a tent, a teenage ego on both sides, and a conflict that never should have gone that far. This is Dennis Spurling, also known as Uncle D. You guys appreciate your time here you spent with me. I certainly do appreciate it. I know this is a hard one. My condolences to Austin Metcalf's family, and my sympathies to Karmelo Anthony's family. As far as the rest of society, I think we need to realize that we can tear this country apart if we want to. We can let racial strife and this caste system cause for us to be on each other's necks if we want to. But we ain't got nowhere else to go. You white folks, them Europeans don't even like you. They don't want you there. Black Americans, you think we welcome back in Africa? Do you think they want us to come back to Ghana? Huh? Oh, maybe we'll go back. You want to go to the Caribbean? You think they want us there? Nope. Y'all better learn to get along. We've been here almost 500 years. I understand the racial undertones, but we better learn to get along. We don't have anywhere else to go. And we got people looking at America that want to destroy America. They don't like us. For whatever reason. They don't like us, whatever. They don't like none of us. You better learn to get along. Nevertheless, God bless you all. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for time. And as I said before, y'all go check out Willie D. I did a earlier part. I didn't want to talk about this. Willie D got me on here talking about, I didn't want to talk about none of this. Okay? I was going to sit in my backyard and enjoy my evening. And y'all got my blood pressure. Look at my forehead sweat. Look at him shining out here. Look at this. I didn't want to talk about this, man. It's just too personal. It's too personal. It's too close. But it was necessary. This is Dennis Spurling. As I always said this time, I love you all, and I'm out.
Dennis Spurling Podcast. Hit the like button, subscribe.